1 second. My keyboard's acting up.
We're off to a great start.
That was a hell of an intro.
Yep.
That's right.
Nice.
Okay. Welcome to Movie Night Extravaganza, episode 24, doing John Carpenter's original Halloween, but also getting into the sequels. Halloween Kills, of course, the latest one comes out on Friday, I believe, 3 days from now. So I hope that this will, find its way, stalking its way into the algorithm and getting pushed up onto people's like suggested videos or something. But I am joined as always by J. Andrew World, my co-host.
Hello, hello.
What's going on?
Not a whole lot.
Conan Neutron of the rock band.
Really? That's your answer to that? Oh, whatever. It's on a show. NBD.
Conan Neutron of the rock band Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends, and host of the long-running music interview podcast Protonic Reversal, and frequent guest and co-host on this show.
I'm pretty sure it's with his secret friends. No.
Fire that man.
Conan Neutron speaks to his secret friends.
Stop obfuscating. We're trying to keep the brand going, baby. Come on.
Okay. We're joined by Karthik, frequent co-host. Gonna be main co-host on Thursday for the Tropic Thunder episode with Left Flank Vets, and of course does Revolutionary Tracks with Left Flank Vets and Alien Encounters on Substack. And we're also joined by JG Michael of the Parallax View.
Also Halloween super fan. So.
Yep. Halloween historian, Halloween long-running fan, John Carpenter head.
I thought you were going to say Halloween Superstore, which is a different thing entirely.
Yes. He's actually a closed down Michaels, which is where he gets
exactly,
his name from.
Yeah.
And
By the way,
opening up and a couple
I was gonna say real quick, it's good that we're doing a sort of retrospective on the Halloween movies, because they just released the box set of the first 5 films in like 4K restoration, and apparently it's supposed to look amazing now in 4K UHD or whatever.
You can see every part of the nipple.
Those areolas really pop.
I'm quite looking
These
forward
aren't
to
on, right?
seeing
We're not live.
the maggots in Halloween 3, but that could just be me. Yeah, I don't know.
I love the tagline for that one too. Halloween 3, the night no one came home.
Well, of course, Halloween 2018, the tagline was "The night no one came," because there was absolutely no sex in that movie whatsoever.
Wasn't that the point of it? Seemed like that was the point, right? Like, I feel like this is Mike Myers has got to be the world's biggest like cockblock on the planet, like basically.
Haven't you seen Austin Powers?
No, I meant this.
All right, that's
yeah,
that's quota.
1 million. Yeah, that dude.
That's it. No more of that. No more.
Ruby, in the words of serial killer Michael Myers. One interesting thing that I was listening to that podcast, Halloween Unmasked, which is the Ringer put it out when the last remake, so in 2018, dropped, and they did like an 8-episode deep dive. I mean, I sent it, I think, to everybody because I thought it was interesting. They interviewed John Carpenter, they interviewed Jamie Lee Curtis. Like, it was a deep dive onto all these different parts of the show. And I guess the term serial killer really wasn't in vogue, I guess, in the 1970s. It wasn't coined. It got coined after that a little bit, like, around this time, because it was like, serials where they had like the pulp novels and stuff where it would be like an episodic. So it was like an episodic killing spree, I guess, which kind of sounds like a pretty non-professional way to term that, because that's, seen as like the professional term in a lot of cases, I think, for people that engage in those behaviors. But then they also had the Zodiac killer at this point. They had just killing sprees going on in the 1970s, like a lot, and often targeting young girls.
Mindhunter is, right? Like, Mindhunter is like them it's like working out like what became like serial killers. Is that Fincher? Do we have to talk about Fincher? If that's who did that, right? remember correctly.
Yeah, I think he's a producer. I don't know if he's the filmmaker of the series, but
I do know he has a Netflix special about cancel culture that apparently is coming out that somebody made a joke on and was like, "This is why irony is dead." I think it was Ed Bermila from the internet. I can't remember his show name right now.
Is it called Triggered? Because every special on cancel culture,
right? Exactly.
Called Triggered.
But realistically, though, Mindhunter's kind of one of the things I find interesting about that show is it actually did kind of talk about how there came to be these things known as serial killers. Whereas before, I think they called them like murder sprees, or they had like some kind of like more clunky language that didn't pop.
Well, I was gonna say in the original Halloween, Michael Myers is technically a spree killer, right? Because he only killed one other person before, and really. He does it all over one night in '78 during his second kills. So,
especially if you consider the 2018 movie, which is really a remake of Halloween 2. It's not a remake; it's a sequel, right? Because they got rid of all of the
it's not a remake. It's not a remake whatsoever. It's like a direct follow up.
What's weird about that is there's still a lot of callbacks and references to all the other sequels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
except for one thing. We never found out what happened to Ben Tramer. I mean, he was so dreamy, and Jamie Lee Curtis, was like so embarrassed that Laurie was so embarrassed that her friend called him up and said that she thought he was cute, and then he got so unceremoniously killed in part 2, and so now he hits a second lease in life. He's gone.
Well, we may see him in Halloween Kills. I mean, I was surprised. Not to spoil anything, but I don't know if any of you caught on in the 2018 movie, the boyfriend of Allison. I think that's Lonnie's son, and Lonnie was the kid that Loomis scares away in the first movie.
Oh, right.
Yeah. What was it?
There's a lot of
get the hell away, Lonnie. Yeah. Like what
it's the same. Well, it's the same town too, which is
yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It's Haddonfield in both, and so it's like Haddonfield 40 years later. And I one thing that I do think is interesting is obviously John Carpenter in the original Halloween was kind of commenting on like white suburbia. Like, you know what I mean? Like It's terrifying that more and more people are living in it's terrifying of how many people live in suburbia. No, it's terrifying that like more and more people live in these so-called safe neighborhoods. And, the most terrifying thing you think of, number one, is babysitters, which is something that relates to everybody, which they've said over and over again. Both John Carpenter has talked about it, and like the producers of the actual movie, like that guy, JG, you definitely know the guy's name.
Was it Erwin Yablans or Mustafa Akkad? Okay.
Yeah. So, both of them, and there's a making of documentary. They're both talking about the universality of babysitters. And Erwin, he's the one that thought of the idea. It was supposed to be originally called the babysitter murders or something like that.
I feel like no one would remember it today if they had called it the babysitter murders. It would be like it'd be like one of those exploitation movies, like the Toolbox Murders, that everyone forgets about except weirdos like me.
Yeah, no, I mean it's kind of in the vein of a lot of those exploitation films. The fact that they named it something so iconic as Halloween, and kind of set the standard. And I think too, like most of those exploitation films were set in cities for the most part. And here we have it now, transported to suburbia, where we are supposed to feel safe and away from that kind of crime.
Could I add something to that really quickly?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that, and this is like an interesting side tangent we can get into later, but I think the whole suburbia thing gets into Carpenter's ideas about horror, where he's sort of extrapolated on this idea that there can be a sort of left-wing version of horror and a right-wing version of horror. And he sort of frames it as being like, does the terror come from within or does it come from without? As in like, is it a foreign invading force? That would be more right-wing horror. Whereas he's saying with Halloween, the terror is coming from within. It's from within the suburbs where everything is
coming from
nice and perfect.
Right.
Terror's coming from within the
other thing is the point of the original Halloween, because there wasn't all of these franchises and there wasn't all of these exploitation movies in the way that they came afterwards, like the slasher ones.
No, there were exploitation movies before that. I mean,
I'm saying the specific slasher, like Friday the 13th, like stuff like that. Like there was a boom of slasher movies after Halloween that kind of followed a similar formula. They got the formula.
There were a lot of proto slasher films that came out in the 70s that have gotten lost to time.
We just talked about Black Christmas.
I was going to say it's funny with Black Christmas because right before Black Christmas was made, there was a movie. It's in public domain now called Silent Night, Bloody Night, not to be confused with Black Christmas, and it actually is a proto slasher, mainly with people from Warhol Factory starring in it. It wasn't made by Andy Warhol, but it's one of those proto slashers that has very weird cast, and there were a lot of movies like that in the early 70s.
Yeah, well, and blaxploitation is going on in the early 70s, which is an amazing genre of movies. Because
but it was a lot of exploitation films in general and were coming out in the 70s. So it was just part of the zeitgeist, and like through that came Halloween, which was like the I think the purest form of the slasher right there, and where we got so many copies afterwards, but like, it wasn't anything
based on a misreading, I think. About that, but
there were two things I was going to add to that too. It's interesting too, because we can't really talk about Halloween without talking about Psycho, because, in addition to Jamie Lee Curtis,
literally my point I've been trying to make. Yeah.
But there's another thing. In addition to Jamie Lee Curtis, Janet Leigh's daughter being in it, sort of taking up the mantle of, the Scream Queen. There's also the character of Sam Loomis being a character in Psycho. It's, so he borrows a lot of names, and there's a lot of callbacks to Psycho.
He also doesn't. He famously doesn't like. He famously doesn't like coming up with names. He's not good at it, he says. So if John Carpenter chooses names either from like people he actually knows in real life or from pretty frequently. So this cues up the first clip that I had on this list perfectly. About this is Jamie Lee Curtis talking about her experience shooting, coming as an unknown actress, but also like the child of two fucking huge stars. Which I actually I respect the shit out of her for, like, not wanting to use her parents, if she could help it, like not wanting to use her parents' fame to, boost her own career. Like her parents on multiple times were like, hey, we could help you get a movie going. Yeah. And she's like, oh no, I want to audition for and win myself a role in a movie. So this is
she's like Emilio
Tony Curtis was still a pretty big name too. But yeah, agreed. Yeah.
No, I no matter what, she still would have been.
She could have leaned into it. She could have used those connections. Agreed, 100%.
Yeah. Well, I think
just like Nicolas Cage, who's a Coppola.
At one point, Tony Curtis was just gonna hand her a movie role. At least in this case, she had to audition for it, and there were multiple people up for it. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of her point. But
obviously, I'm 61 years old now, and I've done a few things, so I'm feeling pretty solid on my feet, and I don't feel like somebody could push me off of my ownership of who I am and what I've tried to do as a human being and as an actor, an artist, etc. But I know that there were two young women who were the final two choices for the movie. I know who the other actress is. I'll obviously never say so because that would be a terrible thing to do. But given that John and Debra were such fans of Psycho, Loomis named after Loomis, Marion named after Marion, to have Janet Leigh's daughter as one of the two, obviously it tipped it my way. I'm self-realized enough to understand someone would have thought, well, once the movie gets made and we have to go out and sell it, having Janet Leigh's daughter playing Laurie Strode will help us a little bit, little curiosity value, maybe a little publicity. So I want to acknowledge it, but as we looked at the scene together, when they were yelling rolling that evening in West Hollywood, in that moment, I don't give a fuck who your parents are. You have to just be in the moment.
So it was the methodology of the shooting. I think however many people are in this room right now shooting this, we had that many people on the entire crew. It was a small group of guerrilla filmmakers, 2 trucks and a Winnebago that had every department. We just drove around the city and made this movie. There was something incredibly freeing and fun being with really basically young people and everyone kind of working together to make this movie. There was nothing fancy about it on any level. I've certainly missed that and have tried to find that again in my later life. It's been hard to find. when I got Halloween, the first thought in my mind wasn't like, ooh, my mother was in Psycho and I'm going to be in this horror film. I was so thrilled to get a job where the word Laurie was on every page of the script, literally. The last thing I thought about was that, oh, my mother was famous for that.
To be fair, Jamie Lee also wasn't thinking about Psycho because she'd never seen it. She'd want to see her mom die. Also, she just hates horror movies. She seriously hates them, like to the point that when she went to go see Silence of the Lambs, she brought a paper listing all the scenes where a friend warned her in advance she should close her eyes. But Psycho had been a part of her life anyway. I mean, for a while, her mom got so many fan letters from obsessive people that the FBI had to investigate. And after Psycho, Janet Leigh never showered again. So when Jamie Lee was little, she only took baths too.
To be fair, baths are awesome.
Well, I kept that in there because of because we watched that clip of Janet Leigh last week where she was like, "Oh, I never showered again." So I thought that was a cool follow up to our conversation.
Pop quiz. What movie? Go on. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say it's a callback to the classic episode that happened last week of Psycho, and what I was gonna say a little bit earlier was that I kind of feel like, Andrew, your take on it is sort of like castigating somebody coming into the record store for not listening to the entire Nuggets compilation when you talk about these obscure horror movies, because like, you know, the slasher genre, you got, like we said, we talked about in Psycho and Eyes Without a Face came out the same year, 1960. And yeah, there were other ones that came around, but I feel like Halloween is incredibly important as this entire genre, not to mention just a very good movie, but there would be no slasher genre without Halloween.
Oh,
Flat
absolutely.
Out. At least not in the way that any way that we could recognize. And you
I
can't say
don't
that
disagree
about
with
like you know, the dusty cockroaches or whatever on the fucking Nuggets comp. Sorry, pardon my French, but
Well, the point of this, the point of this month of movies, or at least the Tuesday ones, is kind of to debate these points or talk out these points and kind of establish a chronology, I guess, of you know, the slasher genre as a whole and the impacts that it's had on society culturally, which is why I think that it's cool to juxtapose the 1978 Halloween and the 2018 Halloween 40 years later. And you know, because number one, I think that the point about the final girl, and I have a thing on that at some point later on, but like the tropes that go into it, like, you know, this is the final girl that lives through everything because they don't have sex and they don't do drugs, and which, I mean, obviously, you know, Jamie Lee Curtis breaks that rule in Halloween, but like the misreading of like Michael Myers as a morality tale, I guess, which wasn't the point whatsoever. And I 100% believe John Carpenter when he says that wasn't the point whatsoever. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like he was trying to pick up on anything. So
I was going to say, in regards to that, I remember watching Halloween in theaters a few years back, the 78 movie. And one of the things that stood out to me is, you know, usually you think of slasher movies like, oh, this is going to be the movie where you end up actually cheering for the villain because you hate the teenagers so much. I really did not dislike like Annie or PJ Souls' character in the original. I mean, they're not like unlikable teenagers as you would see in most slasher movies.
I think
Randall brought the Ramones to her high school.
Yes.
This brings up the Debra Hill clip that I wanted to play next, which is talking about Debra Hill, who was, you know, John Carpenter's girlfriend at the time that the movie started. Not by the time the movie was released, but at the time the movie started, and like, you know, a lifelong creative partner, I guess. You know, for The Fog and like several other, you know, big titles that they did together, and became like in her own right just an amazing producer.
I was going to say earlier, what I was going to say with Pop Quiz was The Fog, starring Jamie Lee Curtis and Janet Leigh together. Like, I'm sorry.
Jamie Lee Curtis, I think, didn't like The Fog, right? Because she thought it was too close to Halloween. She was like, "Oh God, I'm gonna get tight. This is my first movie or my second movie. Like, same directing and producing team, and it's a similar enough movie."
She's pretty young at the time, so I mean, I guess it makes sense, right?
She was 19 when she was in Halloween, so like, it was, you know, it's an interesting time, I think, to be in this a buddy, because you know, her horror movie career was right at the time that the slasher boom happened. And
yeah, I was going to say, outside of the Halloween movies, I think The Fog, Prom Night, and Terror Train are her only other horror movies that she's been in.
but but they were all in like a a quick session, I guess, because people kept asking her to be in these movies, and then obviously she got around to not getting typecast anymore. A weird story that they talked about on that Halloween Unmasked podcast is, I guess, that like they had leaked like a bikini picture or something of her, and then all of a sudden she stopped being like the final girl, and like her phone started ringing for like dramas, and they're like, we really think she could be a dramatic actress. We've seen those bikini pictures, and now we really think her dramatic acting chops.
Oh, they gave us a real big boner. We'll give you the part now.
What was the joke they had in Scream where I think it's Jamie Kennedy's character is like, she stopped being the final girl after she showed her breasts in Trading Places?
I have the Scream the rules as one of the clips that but so this is the Debra Hill one, and Karthik kind of was going to take, I think, more like a feminist reading, or kind of break down the feminist aspects of both movies, I think. And because everybody I kind of asked about different I guess aspects they wanted to focus on. So I'll throw it to Karthik after this clip to comment on it.
Today, Debra Hill is a player, one of the busiest producers in LA, but she remembers Halloween.
What I like about horror films is the fact that they really get you to react. For me, the films were a way to kind of leap from reality into some sort of great fantasy. One of my first jobs was a script supervisor working on a movie called Goodbye, Norma Jean. And then I met John Carpenter when he directed Assault on Precinct 13. And I was his script supervisor and assistant editor. And then we decided to collaborate on Halloween. Irwin Yablans actually came up with the idea of setting it in Halloween. And we were searching for a story, what could the story be? And because we were very limited, in fact, they wanted babysitters. So, and I'd been a babysitter and I had all these great stories. But when he called and came up with the brilliant idea of using the themes of Halloween to tell our story, it was like a gold mine. We went to a list of scares, like imagine if, you're in bed with your boyfriend and he goes down to get some water or Coke or something and comes back with a sheet trying to pretend he's a ghost, but it's not him. It's all these kinds of things that we wrote down, all these scares. And then we decided to weave the scares into the story.
Basically, it was a complete 50-50 collaboration.
I wrote the first draft, laying in the kids, the teenagers, the teenage talk, the girl talk amongst each other. And John came back with a pass for the Sam Loomis character, which is played by Donald Pleasance. So all the stuff about evil and everything is really John's.
The first thing the crew had to do was to get over the idea that John's girlfriend was their producer. And as Tommy explains,
if you didn't know Debra or you didn't know anything about the show, you would have said, oh man, nepotism out the wazoo. This is going to be a disaster. The only thing was, Debra knew exactly how to produce a movie. She was forceful. She was visionary. She was unafraid. She was courageous and tremendously energetic. Debra was a powerhouse. She was tremendous.
Every movie needs a Debra. I bring up Debra a lot because it's important to me that we shift away from thinking of Halloween as strictly a John Carpenter movie. Debra wrote the most important dialogue in the script. She wrote pretty much all of the lines for Laurie Strode and Annie the Smart Aleck and Linda the Pigtailed Cheerleader. Debra is why Laurie Strode and her friends feel real, which means Debra is why Halloween feels real.
She was instrumental in creating Laurie and the girls, just the whole vibe of the girls, the way the girls talked.
Even Linda's catchphrase.
Totally.
But Debra hung out with Jamie Lee a lot.
Debra Hill and I became very close girlfriends. I was 19, she was 30, and separate from being a producer and an actress.
Debra was actually even younger than that. She was only 27.
My kind of like, I would say, I don't even know if it would be a feminist reading. It's more like an interest in the aspect of babysitters being the main like characters in the story, aside from the kind of faceless guy, which is that, like, he grows up without
the shape.
he grows up without parental supervision, or like they're not around, they're asleep at the wheel, or like they're basically busy going into the city and hustling or whatever. And then there's also like the growing up, raised by the television kind of upbringing that the kid has. So the whole concept of the babysitter as somebody who's supposed to be the adult in the room, but is actually not an adult and is supposed to step in to play an adult role when the mother is absent. And I feel like that's kind of the dichotomy that I noticed, which is that like there's a tension between wanting the babysitter to be like the mom and the frustration that comes from someone who is sexually frustrated. It seems like the serial killer, which is like I actually have some thoughts on the idea of a serial killer itself coming up at this time. But it's kind of like someone who's sexually frustrated, who's expecting the babysitter to be like the mother, kind of like be the nurturing character, except like they have their own plans, like they have their own lives, which is also speaking to the whole idea of like the feminist movement and like women having an agenda of their own, etc. And like the dudes being like frustrated here, because he's not able to get her interested in him or whatever, and he has to literally stab her in order to get through, which is extremely violent in so many ways. The stabbing itself, like kind of almost in a worse sort of way, even includes a quantum of like assault, like sexual assault involved in it. It's not purely like a physical assault of stabbing that he's inflicting on these women as an adult, and that's something that seems like pretty revealing of like what seems to be the consequence of like a established dichotomy between like this angel like mother figure who's actually not there, absent, and who's not able to be replaced by this demonic pot smoking, rock and roll listening, bell bottom jeans wearing, like
bell bottom jeans will get you every time.
Yeah.
Dungarees.
His first victim is his sister, right? Like his
Judith.
Yeah, so his first victim is the sister that's supposed to be watching over him.
I thought she was a babysitter. Sorry,
Well, she is technically babysitting him. I mean, but the first victim is the sister, and then from there he kind of starts targeting babysitters, which is an interesting thing to your point, right? Like because it goes from the mother herself, whatever happened there, to the sister, to women who are filling the same role, I think, as the sister was filling. In the situation where
failing to fulfill that, which is the point, right? Like he's repeating the pattern of constantly being underwhelmed by like these women who are not living up to the expectation of like mom.
Yeah, and it's the one truly, I think, voyeuristic shot of a woman's body in the movie, like in the sense of like when you see
from a child's perspective, which is very disturbing. Yeah.
Like when you see the when you see the people having sex in the original Halloween, like it's placed there in a non-voyeuristic way. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're not like, it's not zooming in on them. You're not like forcibly kind of watching them the same way you would be in other later slasher movies. You're kind of, but the one shot that does seem somewhat voyeuristic is the two holes in the sheet or whatever, like in the mat when he comes in the first time with his sister. I think
to be clear, he definitely has sunglasses on, and like that's something I think is very notable. Not the least of which is because it's sort of like, hey, check it out, baby. Oh, it like, and it's kind of like shows like a low key amount of like psychological insight into what he's doing, right? Which is that like maybe he's getting something out of the not just the killing itself, but in like the nature of how the Riff Randall's getting killed. I can't remember. What's her name? Cole. She's always Riff Randall to me. God damn it.
Conan, I thought you'd appreciate this, which is like I always used to think that this Mike Myers character, even before like I actually knew this character's name, I knew him as like in this movie. I always thought that he reminded me of Ryan Adams, just the way that he looked, and like just like a kind of vibe that I got, which is like a very like, it's something disturbing, but also kind of like sad and like lonely. Like you almost felt like, man, I feel like this dude is like just crying, in his get himself to sleep at
Just
night.
give him a guitar and have him write some sad songs.
Yeah, that's kind of
cover some Taylor Swift.
The original Halloween Rock and Roll High School connection made me wish that we had Joseph McBride on for this episode. I think would have been hilarious. It's like because we asked him about Rock and Roll High School at the end of our interview with him, or Andy did.
Yes.
So I thought I don't know. After the fact, I was like, damn, we should have invited him.
McBride also has another connection to this because he actually ended up writing an early draft of one of the horror movies that came right after this that Jamie Lee Curtis was in. He wrote an early draft of Prom Night. So he has all kinds of weird connections to these things.
So PJ Souls, and of course I'm joking when I keep calling her Riff Randall, because I think Rock and Roll High School is a great American movie and a perfect icon of ridiculousness in a certain type of Roger Corman style filmmaking. But it's PJ Souls, and I think it's interesting that she plays at least the voice of one of the teachers in the 2018 one, which is a good kind of callback for the for the fans.
Well, and something that they really went for, I think, if you watch the interviews with them talking to interviewers and stuff, there's a lot of, at the end of the Jamie Lee Curtis thing, she says, oh, I haven't been able to find that vibe of people just kind of hanging out and loosely doing a movie. When she does the 2018 one, she says that the fact that everybody kind of working on it, Danny McBride, which is hilarious that he's one of the people working on it, but like Blumhouse, they're all kind of just buddies that are making this movie together. And I mean, props to them for doing non-toxic masculinity, bro, horror movie writing. But no, but she's but Jamie Lee Curtis says something about how in one of the clips, I'm not sure which one it is, so I can't pull it up, but she says something about how she finally did find that same energy again, because once again it's kind of this more casual back and forth between the directors and the writers and her, as someone who's kind of interpreting their own character, because John Carpenter is a director that doesn't really care that much, I think, about why, he leaves it up to the actors to decide why their character is doing something or their motivations. You know what I mean? John Carpenter is just kind of, he trusts the actor, and then, at least this is what he explains about his own directorial process. I mean, who knows how accurate anybody really is, but he leaves it up to the actor to decide why they're doing something, to decide the backstory, and kind of just gives them physical directions. So it's an interesting collaborative process, I think.
Well, I think we touched on an important thing about the original Halloween too, is that we're not rooting for the killer. We're sort of why have all these just well-rounded normal people who we're somewhat invested in the lives of, they're being harried by this force from outside that is murdering them. And you have to understand that we're looking at this with decades and decades of almost cynicism and irony and references and so on and so on. But one of the things that I think made the 2018 Halloween pretty good is that it built stakes in the actual people that are getting killed, instead of being oh, what's the kill count? Where's the kill counter at? How much blood was spilled, so on and so on.
Well, it's easy to build those stakes when no one's having sex. You got plenty of time to.
What I was gonna say in that regard, I mean, I was glad that this was a return for Jamie Lee Curtis, because I still have bad dreams about the first time I saw Halloween H2O, aka Halloween Dawson's Creek, and for me this was I thought Halloween 2018 was a much more enjoyable experience.
Well, each sequel kind of. I mean, if things are focusing on different parts of it, there are parts that definitely I think aren't really I think there's an over analytic frame that goes into making these, because of Friday the 13th, because of all these movies that came after it.
Well, then it becomes super referential, and there's nothing wrong with that. I loved Final Girls. That was a great movie, but if it's super referential, then that's a different kind of thing. One of the things that I guess I'm just going to sneak this point in now. One of the things I love about Halloween is that it established all these tropes. It's a groundbreaking film, the Blink style of editing, where you see Michael and Michael's there, and you see him on the walk, and then hey, did you? And then he's gone. How often do we see that? Not even just in horror movies, but think of the Christian Bale Batman movies or something along those lines, right? Huge mainstream things. That it's a cheap camera trick, but it's it creates mystery and suspense. And a lot of the problem I have with a lot of modern horror is they forget about the suspense. They don't go for the gore and not go for the suspense. Think about like the neighbors.
No, who doesn't forget about the suspense? Our old pal Alfred Hitchcock.
Exactly, and it's very Hitchcockian in its way.
Yeah.
Hitchcockian, sure.
No, Hitchcockian is the correct.
Is that correct? Okay.
Which is why in the second Halloween movie, her dad said that he got peanut butter on his Hitchcockian.
I was gonna.
That's a weird fucking line, by the way.
I know. It just bothered me when he said that. I was like, okay, I gotta make reference to that at some point.
Oh man.
I was gonna add really quick too. What's so interesting to me about the tropes that sort of get put in place after Halloween and especially after Friday the 13th is the deconstructions of the genre actually start happening very, very early in the 80s. I think the first one to do it was the Roger Corman produced Slumber Party Massacre, which minor movie, but was written and directed by two feminist women. And it's a complete sort of satire / deconstruction of the sort of slasher genre. And that's in 1982. So it's interesting how quickly people started deconstructing the genre and sort of doing meta commentaries on the genre, even 4 years after Halloween.
Well, it's a very thin genre.
Yeah.
I mean, subgenre. So
it became a thin genre. Let's be clear. It didn't start that way.
Well, it didn't start as a genre at all. You know what I mean? Like Halloween's. No, but I mean, like, so Halloween's not. I don't think Halloween's trying to do anything. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that movie is trying to come into this situation with pretensions. And there's the Final Girl one that I was going to play at some point, clip or whatever. They're talking about that and they break it down. Like, it wasn't a movie coming with any kind of moral compass. Actually, the opposite. It was just supposed to be terrifying because, like, you could just be a normal teenage girl babysitting and wanting to have sex with your like high school boyfriend or whatever. Then all of a sudden you get murdered. There's no
by a 6-year-old child. That's yeah. So parents, don't leave your boy at home, like with the babysitter. He's gonna kill her. Like,
and especially not with any Jordan Peterson books or 12 More Rules.
That's a really interesting point though that you bring up for us, because if you ever
especially
no not the Peter. So
you just can't go around murdering people, and I'm just afraid that if we don't clean our rooms right now, then maybe people are gonna just turn around and they're gonna murder each other, and we just can't stop it. So that's why everybody needs to be assigned a wife.
You don't sound Kermit the Frog enough though to pull off the Peterson there. Just add a little bit more Kermit the Frog in there.
I used to have this Kermit the Frog this Kermit the Frog toy when I was a kid. And every time it said anything, I would go, "Hi ho!" And now I just think of like him, Kermit the Frog.
I just wanted to add something real quick.
Go ahead.
What I was going to say is, with regards to the slasher genre and everything Halloween did, I feel as if when you talk to a lot of the directors that did some of the original movies that are considered slashers, like if you talk to Sean Cunningham, who did Friday the 13th, they'll say, I never really intended it for it to be a morality tale about sex. That wasn't, I didn't think about that while making the film. And also Jeff Lieberman, Just Before Dawn, he made a sort of a reverse Deliverance type movie that sort of has a feminist vibe to it. But if you ask him, is it a slasher movie? He'll say, no, we didn't even call it slashers back then. No one knew what that was. It's sort of a retroactive term in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Halloween's not a slasher movie. Like, no, never in the movie do they say, hey, Michael Myers is coming and he's going to be a slasher. In fact, they don't really even, Loomis uses the word Michael and but it's not like over, like he's just the Shape. Like everybody who's involved in the movie, cast and the crew, just calls him the Shape because he doesn't say anything. He heavy breathes.
I always called him the guy in the William Shatner mask.
William Shatner is also someone who comes to mind. Yeah, that's true. Damn.
So
he's literally in a William Shatner mask.
What mask is William Shatner wearing though?
No, he's literally in a mask of William Shatner.
I'm just
no. He called up. They called up William Shatner before the filming the movie. Said, "Can we borrow your mask?" And William Shatner said yes, and that's how that's happened.
Interestingly, it's actually from a movie where they made a mask cast of William Shatner's face, and he had to wear a William Shatner face. It's not from Star Trek. It's from a movie that he made like during that time where they made a casting of his face so he could rip off a face of his own face, and then after that they sold it as a mask to be like a Star Trek mask, I guess.
That's why it was kind of distended, as opposed to, it wasn't like a William Shatner as he is now, where, like, let's be honest, he's putting it down. But if I can, real quick, we're all over the place here, but there's a few things. First of all, I learned tonight that a friend of mine in a band, his dad wrote the first Friday the 13th. And I don't know how you, like, if that's your dad, I don't know how you don't lead with that for your entire life. But I had no idea. I learned that tonight. And that kind of backs up, like, the point of, like, it wasn't like there was even a genre called, like, slasher movies or something along those lines, which comes back to the establishment of tropes. Like, think of stoners. Think of, like, these kinds of movies and how they view stoners. Oh, they're smoking the pot. Up, right? This is like one of the first movies to really do that. And that became a trope because of Halloween. And then that gradually became like an archetype, and that became a cliche almost. But then there's also
I want to argue the fact that I don't think that was intentional either. Like, I think that it's just,
of course not.
People brainstorming. What do teenagers do? Teenagers, they would be in a car smoking pot, listening to "Don't Fear the Reaper," wanting more cowbell. They go to their cowbell dealer. He gives them a little more cowbell, and then they're all.
I got to be clear. I think it's exactly the opposite of, like, being intentional. I think it's just they were trying to portray kids being kids. And of course, like, around that time period, I think, oh, hey, no parents around, like, we're hanging out, let's smoke some pot. Okay. And that is a thing. But then also, like, other tropes that it accidentally sort of created, right? Like, one of the creepiest things to me about the movie is that when Laurie is, like, running house to house trying to get help, and, like, the one neighbor, like, turns off the lights and, like, closes.
Oh yeah, no, it's fucked up.
Terrifying. Almost more terrifying than you got a killer running after you. Like this fucking asshole over here, like, runs his lawnmower at 8 a.m. isn't gonna let me in when there's a killer after me.
But that's kind of.
Well, they think it's a Halloween prank, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Well, exactly. There's all kinds of reasons.
Just kids, kids. It's just kids doing stuff.
Just kids doing stuff.
Pranks.
But I think one of the most important ones, and since we invoked Friday the 13th a few times, and this is the last thing I'm going to say on it, is that, like, this is one of the first movies to start the end, or is it? Which I like to call "No monster is truly dead until it explodes."
Which is why, I mean, but also if you do have the opportunity to just make a quick cash grab, which really is what Friday the 13th is, or not Friday the 13th, but really is what Halloween is originally for John Carpenter, right? Like, he sees it as a stepping stone. He doesn't see himself at this point, like, you have to understand, as like the master of horror, or, like, a horror director. He actually wanted to be a Western director, a dying breed at this point, because number one, he's a leftist, so it's not like which his car literally had a John Wayne sticker on the back of it, but, like, ironically, I think, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like John Carpenter is some, like, big, like, right wing, like, oh, let's, like, you know what I mean? Like, every movie he's ever done is kind of at least somewhat subversive. Like, maybe not.
I mean, even the cop in this movie, like, actually speaks about somebody smoking pot in a very chill way. Like, the cop is like, yeah, kids, that's what they do. They smoke pot. What do you do?
Well, like the Killdozer song, "The Pig Was Cool."
It's suburbia though, right? Like a thing that they've said before about the Laurie character is, like, she's never experienced anything bad until this point. Really, like, not anything horrifying anyway. That's why the trauma in the latest one, which John Carpenter helped, create, is so amassed in her, because it's not like she's kind of, a rough and tumble kid that finds her friend murdered. She's literally just like an innocent babysitter that's never seen a dead body. You know what I mean? Like, never experienced anything actually traumatic, that all of a sudden they find 5 of their dead friends in a room, which I think, it's the suburbia point, right? Oh, like but also, like, it's the suburbia point of, like, suburbia is supposed to be somewhere safe, and it's an amazing location for horror for that reason. Like, it's all very white people, upper middle class or middle class people living in very depersonalized housing situations, kind of these perfectly manicured lawns, and in the minds of a lot of people, that's what they're aspiring to be. But it's also ripe for horror, because somebody walking through a suburban neighborhood just killing people, that's where you leave your doors open, or your door unlocked. You know what I mean? Like that's where you leave the windows.
Not Laurie's
unlocked.
neighbors, but yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you can even like think of the serial killer itself in the most recent iteration, which is not like a Jack the Ripper figure. Like it's a person who is like cold-blooded, completely like detached and removed from their surroundings. And it's like I was thinking about how the serial killer itself is kind of like a very interesting neoliberal archetype of a person without a personality, someone who just like takes the shape of the vessel and just like kills it at the end. And that's kind of how, which is kind of similar to how
Only
like
because,
even Hannibal Lecter eats people.
only
The
because Ted
cannibal.
Cruz is the Zodiac killer.
Sorry.
I said only because Ted Cruz is the Zodiac killer.
I mean, that's just a fact. We all know that. That's
Right. So it's like it's interesting how like the serial killer is kind of like almost an archetype of individualism, where basically it's essentially revealing itself to be a kid left alone, and that's why I feel like it's also kind of cool that it's not
Macaulay
really.
Culkin. It's Macaulay Culkin. It's the Home Alone 4.
Home Alone kid, right? Yeah. I mean, it's the '60s version of the Home Alone kid. It's Rosemary's Baby. It's not Home Alone. So it's like, but at the same time, it's kind of also an important, I think, like thing to pay attention to, because the horror of, so to say, I guess like you could call it the American dream, or the creation of the middle class. Is essentially the fact that it would be some kind of finality, and it would lead to like a degradation of society of some sort, or like you would plateau out in your life and you would have nothing of interest happening to you, to the extent that there is no plot. Again, like we're talking about, we had this chat about the Birds, how there was no plot other than the killer. And it's kind of similar, right? Like it's just a bunch of people hanging out and talking about smoking pot and like, having sex and whatnot. But he is the one who actually brings the plot into the story, into the picture. Without him, there is no plot. And that's kind of also fascinating, maybe how a serial killer also thinks, like that they make their own story and make other people pawns in it.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is that, we want things to happen for, shout out to Ben Burgess, a little bit of logic. We want a logic to why someone's killing someone. We want rationality. We want some kind of narrative that explains to us, like, this is why this is happening. And the way that the sequels kind of, I think, at least in the minds of like Danny McBride and everyone who wrote the 2018 one, the sequels gave it a logic, because all of a sudden, like, oh, well, there's the plot twist and it's the sister, like all this different stuff. Like, but there is no logic to it. Like the 2018 one is going back to the exact basic form that John Carpenter wanted to take, which is the fact that it's literally terrorism for them. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's no logic to it. There's no rationale. Yeah,
it's
like,
based in reality. Busta Rhymes spin kicking someone outside a window. There aren't any fucking druids involved. Like it's real. Like, it's something that could happen next door down the street.
But it's not real in the sequel remake 2018 version, because like if it was real, like people would have like financial stress, because you can't, like the whole town seems to have been like trapped in like this weird bubble where there's no outside forces, giving it any problems. And if it had like a little bit of capitalist realism sprinkled into it, that would have actually, created Laurie Strode's daughter did really well for herself, becoming a psychologist and is making bank, and everybody's kind of jealous of her. And her
husband got peanut butter on his penis.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hey, could it?
But like there's nothing to kind of to discuss like the current because in the 70s there was a bit of a malaise in the the whole was a stagflation, but like we're 40 years into frickin' Reaganomics, so where was that in this movie?
But is it incumbent on the movie to show that? I mean, I get, like,
it makes it
It's a
relatable.
movie about a dude killing people too, dude. I mean, like, I get it, but like,
I mean, the old Halloween seems to show it though. Like the old Halloween seems to show the kind of almost zombified generation sitting in front of a TV. If on the one hand, like the girls, the babysitters are chatting on the phone with each other to the extent that they don't even see a person intruder intruding the like entering the house. the kids are basically, they can't even hear what the babysitter, when the babysitter yells out to her, or even the boy. I guess the boy is a little more vigilant because he's got his little like taekwondo outfit or whatever, like the karate outfit on. And that's also fascinating because it kind of shows this, dimension of like kids having extracurricular interests, but also at the same time having to be trapped in the house and whatnot. And also kind of fascinating, I thought that like Mike Myers is institutionalized for 15 years, which is, I guess, like about as much time as it's going to take for you to go through high school, like go through K through 12. And it's probably, like that's like the Pink Floyd song comes to mind. And of course, like, John Carpenter also made Children of the, what's the name of the movie? Like
Children of the Corn?
Children of the Corn or Dawn of the Dead? I might be confusing.
Didn't make Dawn. Definitely didn't.
Village
make
of
Dawn
the Damned is
Village
the
of
one
the
he
Damned.
directed.
Village of the Damned.
That's I was gonna say Children of the
Ethan and the Damned.
They're all great movies.
Third one.
Dawn of the Dead is.
Well, I was gonna bring up our Friday conversation that we're gonna have about Dawn of the Dead for a very similar reason.
Yeah.
Because
What a
that's
great
very-
segue.
That's a very different form of a similar idea about consumerism and the literal zombification, of course. A little bit too on the nose, I think, but like of the American consumer, of the American suburban middle class, upper class kind of person who literally gets turned into a zombie and goes back to the mall because they're like, where else am I gonna fucking go?
I was gonna real quick, if I could, Forrest, and I wanted to get your take on this, or everyone's take. It's interesting. You're pointing out that the original Halloween is a very suburban sort of setting, and you can imagine these people sort of being like upper middle class or middle class. But it's interesting in the sequel.
A lot of Nixon voters.
What's interesting is, so 10 years later, when you get Halloween 4, they actually start portraying Haddonfield as like a rundown, like redneck or hick sort of town, and that actually I think carries on even you see elements of that in the 2018 movie. Like you almost get the impression that they're in the boonies. So it's interesting how the setting of Halloween and Haddonfield itself has sort of changed over the years.
They also make sure to that you understand that it's not just a white neighborhood anymore, right? Like the kid that's getting babysat by Vicky is a black kid. Like they're making sure that that this is a different kind of time period where it's not just kind of like I can't think of a black character whatsoever in the original Halloween. I think that reinforces the fact that this is supposed to be like a safe middle class suburban white neighborhood that's no longer safe suburban. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that it makes sense for the background of that horror movie. But it is interesting that they make sure to show you like a far more diverse Haddonfield.
I mean, right
now
that
kid is like one of the coolest characters. That kid's awesome.
Oh, that kid was like the best character that wasn't
the best part of the movie. Yeah, of the Michael himself.
Family.
Yeah.
It is the time of like the kind of minority characters like getting to live the sort of, so to say, picket fence. At least the gentrified, the ones who are able to at least like striving. Or able to live the quote unquote American dream, the scanty few who are able to do it.
Which isn't untrue, but is often provided without the conflict that actually does go with that, which kind of does happen at the time of the original, like around the time of the original Halloween, where Nixon's election and like a lot of the stuff that comes after that is kind of a direct response to like this NIMBY attitude in those suburban neighborhoods, like not in my back, like what I mean, like not wanting black families to move in, not wanting minority families to move in of any kind.
Busing.
Like, yeah. So
someone should make a deep fake of Halloween where they replace the Michael Myers mask with Nixon's face.
I feel like I mentioned. I feel like I had a weird. Oh, maybe I was listening to that podcast and they said, "Oh yeah, I was listening to that podcast." Maybe I don't actually talk to anyone in real life. Somebody said something about a Nixon, because I was thinking about a Nixon mask, and then they were like, "Oh, if there was a Nixon mask, like you'd always remember that it was Nixon." That what I mean? Like, so then it would feel like a political movie.
Yeah, it's almost better that it's just like this sort of like the mask is kind of so amorphous and non-identifiable that it became an icon in and of itself. Like that's how I think that.
Just like William Shatner.
it's baby faced. I feel like, and I mean, and that's why I think it's kind of it's almost innocent in a way. You kind of feel sorry for the guy looking at it, because it feels like he's trying to be on the one hand it's cold blooded, and it's like, sociopathic, completely drawing a blank on the outside, not expressing anything. But on the other hand, there's also like this very clear like baby facedness of a character who probably remains the age that he was when he committed the first horrific act. And it's kind of like almost a tragic tale, because like it's almost like showing the American dream as like a tragedy almost, because it's like saying that you have no choice but to have your like little kids, a little boy especially, go down this route of like becoming his own worst nightmare and like everybody else's worst nightmare or something like that.
I think that reading too much into it politically though isn't always the best idea, because like the central point of what John Carpenter, at least in the original, was trying to do is just scare the shit out of you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he was trying to take something that seems safe and scare the shit out of you. His later work, obviously, like the leftist influences, I think, creeps in a lot more, and he's an amazing subversive director. But just specifically for this movie, what he's trying to do is just make this movie as terrifying as possible. And I wanted to enter this into the record, I guess. This is the trope thing from the Halloween Unmasked that they talked to Jamie Lee Curtis about what they were actually trying to do with the tropes, because I think it's kind of enlightening to hear this.
What's the difference? Well, Scream Queens are all great horror actresses. Final Girls are a smaller subgroup, like distinguishing between all birds and flamingos. Final Girls exist only in slasher films, and the number one thing that makes them special is that they live. At least until the sequel. What makes Final Girls so safe? Well, they follow the slasher rules. I'll let Randy, the slasher film expert from the movie Scream, that 90s meta film that hyper-analyzed all things horror, break down the 3 commandments, which he's doing right now as Halloween plays in the background.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie. For instance, number 1, you can never have sex. Big no-no! Big no! I'm a dead man. Sex equals death, okay? Number 2, you can never drink or do drugs. No, the sin factor. It's a sin. It's an extension of number 1. And number 3, never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back. I'm getting another beer. You want one? Yeah, sure. I'll be right back.
Still, Laurie Strode set the mold, and after her, slasher films copied this idea of having a sole, innocent girl who survives the horrors that kill off all of her friends. But even without the leering camera work, there is a pattern. Buckle in, because here is where we need to talk about sex and Scream Queens and Final Girls, and how right after the liberated 60s and 70s, Halloween accidentally screwed up teen girls for a generation. First, the facts. Michael's sister Judith has sex and gets murdered. Linda has sex and she gets strangled with a phone cord. Annie is about to drive off and have sex and she gets stabbed in the car. Laurie, our final girl, does not have sex, and she lives. Like Scream says, sex is death. When Halloween became a huge hit, copycats like Friday the 13th repeated what they thought Halloween's script was saying: don't have sex or you'll die, like it had deliberately written these slasher rules. Even though Halloween didn't have any rules, and it didn't even want rules, because John's whole point was that bad stuff happens just because.
Nobody had a clue that there would be people who are interested in a darker understanding of none of it. It didn't exist. It's fun to intellectualize it, and I'm sure there are feminist classes at Oberlin College where they discuss why the virgin survives and the promiscuous girl doesn't.
But there are huge problems with this final girl rule, which is why it's important to go back to its Halloween beginnings and be very clear that it was an accident.
There is no deeper meaning to that the promiscuous girl gets killed and the virgin survives. You know what? I was a virgin at 17 in high school. A lot of girls are virgins at 17 in high school.
When Jamie Lee lost her virginity, she went right home and told her mom, which is a little weird. But what's normal is that even today, the majority of high schoolers, girls and boys, are virgins. But on screen, slasher films got morality, and then that morality got all warped.
It's very easy to look at this as a kind of puritanical, the sluts will get punished. But I think that ignores what was going on at the time. This was a generation who grew up with the civil rights movement and women's liberation, as it was called at the time. You know what? They're all just young women trying to figure it out, and they're trying to figure it out together.
The girls aren't supposed to be divided into good versus bad. They're just three friends figuring out dating and adulthood and sex. Like this scene when Annie is teasing Laurie about her crush, a scene which, by the way, Debra Hill directed.
Ben Tramer? I knew it! So you do think about things like that, huh, Laurie? Shut up. He's cute!
That's a really naturalized conversation between women. That kind of almost faux hostile, but still really affectionate tension that's going on in that conversation in the car is perfect. It's perfect. She should be a household name. She should be up there with John Carpenter. Debra Hill is absolutely a shining light, a patron saint.
Yeah, so I think that I think that what the 2018 version of Halloween does is it, on some level, I think it does try to be realistic, but on the other level, it's kind of trying to erase the wrongs that, oh, look who it is. Kenzo Shibata out here ready to disrupt white suburbia.
Oh, yeah. Haddonfield, beware.
Are you going to run against Conan?
I was going to say, I think it's a swing district.
Run against?
He's running for Congress in Haddonfield.
No, I'm going to be the comms manager for the campaign, Conan. I'm not going to run
let's
against
go.
you. We're going to squad up and we're going to win this shit.
I like it. Haddonfield today, USA tomorrow.
I just know I'm in depth with my
Haddonfield now more than ever.
Today your love, tomorrow the world.
Exactly. Second Ramones reference of the night.
Woo! I didn't even know.
This is how you roll.
Yeah, so I think that though it's important to realize that we're kind of in this annoyingly postmodern age where every single type of movie, every single type of media has to be overanalyzed, subversive as fuck. Like you have to realize that these are tropes that you're playing with, and then all of a sudden the tropes have to be inverted because like that kind of annoying podcaster, film historian said. I mean, please come on our podcast, but
now that I've insulted you, please come on.
We're clout sharks here. It don't matter.
You're negging that podcaster for us. That, right? Yeah.
No, but I found it kind of I found it a little bit annoying, which says an entire generation of girls had their psyches destroyed by slasher movies.
All right,
I don't think film impacts people that much. That's like that article that I was reading yesterday where that girl was like, "Oh, I didn't like Asian guys because I never saw Asian guys romancing on TV, and now that I've seen it, I'm into it." Like, I don't know.
Do you really need I mean, I was getting laid as an Asian guy before we were on TV. Like, do I need to put out a book?
You can. There's a
talk to the girl. I don't know.
I think people that.
Well, it's Forrest, what you're bringing to mind for me is, if you go back and watch like Ebert and Siskel and Ebert back in the 80s, or if you watch clips of that stuff, the big thing back then was saying slasher movies are going to destroy our entire children's generation. And I mean, we got through just fine. So I would agree with what you're saying there. Yeah.
Siskel and Ebert is an amazing bellwether. I think. I think that they're an amazing like film bellwether because I think that.
And his Vincent Gallo diss is one of the greatest disses of all time.
Yeah.
Did y'all know what I'm talking about?
I know. Yeah.
He made that movie, The Brown Bunny, where he convinced Chloe Sevigny to give him a blowjob on film in a mainstream film. That's art,
the worst
I guess.
Movies of all time. Yes.
Absolutely. No, it's hands down. And then Ebert gave it a bad review, and Vincent Gallo said, "Well, you're a fat piece of shit," or something of that nature.
Oh, yeah, I was reading.
He said he had the physique of a slave trader.
Yeah, that's a super fucked up thing to say.
Yeah.
So then Ebert's reply was, "Yeah, I'm fat, but one day I'll be skinny. But you will always be the guy that made the Brown Bunny."
And Ebert will always be the guy that wrote Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, which is actually a good movie in my opinion.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
Yeah,
I mean, I think
nuance.
Ebert takes the cake for me for like writing positive reviews of the movie Cars, like both Cars 1 and Cars 2, which I love. Like, I love that he loved Cars 2 especially, which is like a pretty fun movie. But on the other hand, like, he trashed Fight Club and The Usual Suspects, which I love also.
Let's go piss on their graves. No, is that too far? No,
the man gives opinions for a living. You're not necessarily going to be right 100% of the time, but he.
No, I actually dig the fact that he trashed both Fight Club and The Usual Suspects, because I don't like either of those movies.
I mean,
I love both those movies, but I get it.
I was just going to say the last thing on Roger Ebert, and then I'll go into the background for a second. But I was going to say it's interesting because his relationship, I think, to horror films changed over time. He was a big critic, I think, especially of those slasher movies, the Nightmare on Elm Streets and all of those. But by the time Wes Craven's New Nightmare came out, he was a big fan of that movie, whereas his co-host, I don't know if it was Roper or if it was still Siskel at the time, he said he thought it was a great movie. It was a postmodernist sort of deconstruction of the genre, and he sort of liked the postmodern approach to it. So even he warmed up to some of these movies over time.
Well, they liked Halloween, though. They liked Halloween. They didn't
because Halloween transcends the genre. That's why
the genre didn't exist, though. I think is the point that we were trying.
But
to
it
make
transcends the genre while at the same point embodying the genre, which is why it's an incredibly iconic film.
And why the sequels suck too, because the sequels just try to be like, for a while there, I remember Halloween was supposed to be each movie was supposed to be like a different story. That was what they originally went with, but like Michael Myers was so popular that Halloween 2 is just a straight sequel. Halloween 3 was a different movie entirely and fun. It's garbage, but it's fun garbage.
I remember
Halloween 3 Season of the Witch rules.
It does, but it's not. I don't think it's. I think of it as a Halloween movie.
I remember when Halloween was just about dressing up and hoping some creepy adult in your neighborhood tries to slip some drugs into your jack-o'-lantern. But
drugs, but not razor blades.
But not razor
you have the razor blades at home to cut up the drugs. You don't need them to give that to you in the candy bar.
Halloween 3 is no chopping mall. Thank you.
Oh,
he dropped the chopping mall reference. Made my night.
I love chopping mall.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question about which is like a more fundamental question, I guess, like to even begin with, why Halloween? And in the 1978 movie, there's a
why fucking not, bro?
What?
Starting with Black.
No, wait.
I'll get Black Christmas, then you get to Halloween.
That's Danny McBride's answer, by the way. Like when someone asked him to justify why he was gonna make it right into Halloween, why the fuck not, bro?
Maybe it's because I watched Tropic Thunder twice. Maybe it's because I watched Tropic Thunder twice last night. I'm on a Danny McBride kick.
No, I was more referring to the fact that in the 1978 movie, Jamie Lee Curtis's character, Laurie, right? Like there's a couple of scenes where she looks out and she points out how these kids are believing this superstition or something like that, and like this kind of almost cynical view towards superstition, and that's kind of fascinating that it's juxtaposing with the kind of becoming more and more nuclear family neoliberalism type economy, and it's like what does that mean that like an economy like that is still maintaining a superstition at the same time, or are both of them myths on some level?
I was just gonna say in response to that, I think one of the interesting ways one could describe the 1978 Halloween is, it's essentially a movie about Laurie Strode. She's babysitting this kid who believes in the boogeyman, and she's trying to tell him the whole time, the boogeyman is not real, kid. The boogeyman's not real. And then at the end, she realizes, oh my God, the boogeyman's real. Yeah, that's sort of the core of the movie. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember watching a movie like that when I was a kid. But anyway, there was
but it's an outside force. That harkens back to the earlier point, right? That Michael Myers is an outside force into the quote unquote perfect idyllic suburban existence, and that's what made it so terrifying to so many people, because they've fled away from all that crime and all those bad schools and whatnot into these suburban areas.
Nice Joe Biden session.
Safe. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, he's also, I think Michael Myers, I love that they call him the Shape, right? Because he's very different than like a Freddy Krueger or a Jason Voorhees or a Chucky. It's like all of those characters sort of have like motives. I guess Chucky just enjoys killing people. He's a sadist.
I was gonna say Chucky's the outlier in that for sure. Chucky's
Well,
like
you-
the like.
You never really know.
Complex.
You never know
That's the
why
Linkin
Michael
Park
does
of,
it.
like,
He wants to be a real boy. Let him be.
It's Pinocchio. But seriously, they never really explain in that first movie why is Michael Myers doing all this. There's like no rhyme or reason. He just sort of
Well, that's and that's on
yeah.
purpose, and that's it's purposeful. And I think that's
what makes it scary. Yeah.
Yeah. No, exactly 100%. That's why John Carpenter thought it was scary when he and his girlfriend that he was cheating on throughout the course of making this movie wrote it together.
Killed and eats a dog. Who does that?
Michael Myers. That's who. No.
Michael Myers. Who also, by the way, where did that fool get his driver's ed? Because that guy's driving all over town in that first movie. I was like, where did that guy?
The Man in Black.
It's explained in Halloween 6.
There's no such thing as Halloween 6, sir.
Like
That's the Druids
I
one,
love
right?
the fact that you pointed out that the outside force is actually the idyllic suburban existence, because and again, it's also pretty cool that you have the Haddonfield next to you, because it almost seems like the idyllic suburban district is actually a pretty shitty hellhole that votes for the kind of least appealing Democrat in all electoral races, which is kind of fascinating. What do you have to say about do you think it was the same at that time as well? The suburb always let down more radical politics.
This is why Karthik is one of the more interesting people to come on this show, because he'll sit back in the cut for 20 minutes and they'll come out with something like that, and you're like, oh.
He should have been out for the player. He could have.
These motherfuckers
the Cobra where
voted for
it's just
Karthik is our ghost face. Let's face it.
But
I'll take that.
Forrest is Jizza. Forrest is definitely Jizza. Because he likes to Jizza. I'm sorry. I was not going to go there with that joke, and then I did.
You should have left it there.
I thought it was all the coffee and cigarettes. I thought I was going to be everyone's looking for old dirty bastard.
Well, I'm in recovery right now, so I'm allowed coffee and cigarettes. That's what I've been telling myself and everyone else.
So back on point.
If you're in a recovery enough, that's your whole diet. There's no food involved.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain level of AA. You reach a certain AA belt, and then or NA belt, and then all of a sudden you're only allowed to have coffee and cigarettes.
I'm the Jim Jarmusch diet.
Wait, what was it in the player when he's like, oh, I've been going to the AA meetings. He's like, oh, you have a drinking problem? And he's like, no, that's where all the deals are made now.
But back to the point, I think if Haddonfield, Illinois was a real place, I think these days it would not only be a swing district, but would have the kind of tabula rosa a Democrat that's oh, he's a veteran, or whatever, a lawyer, prosecutor, or something, some nothing Democrat running. Probably went for Trump in 2016, went for Biden, but just barely in 2020.
That's
hold
what I was
on.
getting at.
Let me finish.
Okay,
Let me finish.
Sorry.
You're describing my district right now.
But I think in 78,
you literally are, and it kind of looks like Haddonfield if you go to certain parts of it.
And I think in 78, it was probably solid Democratic, and that tells you the difference between the 78 movie versus the 2018 movie. So go forth now. That's what I wanted to get at. That was it.
I was just going to say that gets back to what I was trying to get across earlier with. I think throughout most of the sequels, except for maybe the second one, I think you get this impression that there's maybe a Republican underbelly to Haddonfield. In some of the sequels, you have a vigilante sort of rednecks trying to stop Michael at one point, and I think you see a little of that in 2018's movie. There's a lot of rural elements to it and whatnot. I think it's an interesting take because I think there is that impression that these people could vote for Trump.
In real life,
it's kind of like Lanford, how in the original Roseanne series they weren't Republicans, and maybe Lanford and Haddonfield are adjoining suburbs.
Then Roseanne had a little bit too much NyQuil, and
maybe Roseanne is Michael Myers, or actually Dan is the more body type though.
I'm talking
Every
about
time
your producer that
Roseanne
way.
cut him down, he would get out his anger by like chopping up people over in Haddonfield, and never got caught.
Before you came in, I think I brought up how Michael Myers greatly resembles like Ryan Adams, and could easily be like a kind of emo country singer who writes a lot of sad songs about love and loss and all of that. And that's kind of how why he has to stab people, because that's kind of his way of making a mark.
Loomis should have handed him an acoustic.
Hands up, you ever seen Barton Fink? Have you ever seen the movie?
Yes, love that one.
Because that John Goodman terrifies the shit out of me after watching that movie.
The Coen brothers found a way to make that guy edgy.
More than edgy. He has everything's burning behind him, and he's a serial killer. I have a clip for you. It's a Rob Zombie. It's John Carpenter responding to the Rob Zombie sequel. So I promised you like something like this that I would find. So here it is, and this girl is Swedish apparently.
That's quite the intro.
Yeah.
Well, I would say nice things about him, but we did this. I thought it was going to be a real cool deal for the History Channel, Biography Channel, whatever that is. They were going to do about Halloween. I thought, ooh, that's pretty cool. Until I noticed that they did one on Caddyshack. And I thought, wow, what is this? Anyway, they interviewed him on that biography channel, and he lied about me. He said I was very cold to him when he told me I was going to, and that he was going to make it. Nothing could be further from the truth. I said, make it your own movie, man. This is yours now. Don't worry about me. I was incredibly supportive. Why that piece of shit lied, I don't know. He had no reason to. Why did he do it? So, frankly, that will color my response to the film. If I take that away, I did not. I thought that he took away the mystique of the story by explaining too much about the guy. I don't care about that. It's supposed to be a force of nature. He's supposed to be almost supernatural. Knowing about that and he was too big.
Yeah.
It wasn't normal. Anyway.
Great. Well, thank you.
Okay, where are you from?
Sweden.
Excellent work.
I love doing that.
And the screen got taken down. Just kidding.
I've seen
Zombie cells, yeah.
I've seen White Zombie multiple times. I've never seen the Rob Zombie experience though.
The Dylan of our generation, everybody.
That clip just has me wondering what Rob Zombie is going to do for his. I mean, he's remaking The Munsters now as a movie, and I'm kind of half horrified now. Oh God, what is he going to do with that?
He's not going to put a rape scene in it, I hope. That would scar me for life.
So on the Dune episode, I trash talked Hans Zimmer, and he deserves it. But Rob Zombie actually deserves it more because that guy's a freaking prick, and I have that from pretty good authority, aka a band that has toured with him, and he's an ass.
AKA Conan banged Rob Zombie's wife.
Sherry Moon.
Yeah, nice.
I'm getting.
I mean, she scares me, but okay.
And that's why he's gonna win the Haddonfield district in the local congressional.
That's right. Vote Neutron and prosper.
Which I think you should trash Rob Zombie a little bit, but I also do want to. I cut the clip of the John Carpenter stuff too with the music, so I do want you to go through that very soon. So it's a good segue.
Oh, you mean the theme song? Yeah. No, I'll gladly talk trash about Rob Zombie too. But theme song is brilliant. I mean, that's it's first of all, it's 5/4, so it automatically you don't have to be King Crimson to understand that that's kind of off-putting for some, if you're used to more 4/4 sensibility. It's inexorably tied to the movie.
That sounds very suburban, by the way, a 4/4 sensibility.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's think like the Beatles or something. It's just 4/4. It's rock and roll, and I could get into the why it's weird, and like why it's sort of like, oh, why is that off-putting to like, you know, like the regular ear and whatnot. But it doesn't matter. It's just a very clever way of doing what's kind of a simple melody line and making something really iconic in a way that, like, think about like what other things are so inexorably tied to a film. Psycho, sure.
Psycho.
Tubular Bells, Mike Oldfield with The Exorcist, right? But there's a small
and both which interestingly, The Exorcist is another movie that I think that got referenced a lot when John Carpenter was making this. It was like Psycho, The Exorcist were really the two big movies they took inspiration from. But both the Psycho theme and the Halloween theme, like you can pretty much listen to them anywhere, and it makes your experience far more fucking intense. Because
it's inexorably tied to this incredibly tense thing.
But
which is
I think also it's the sounds that they're kind of, you know, like pulling, like I think if you heard either of those songs and hadn't seen the movie, I think there was still like the you know, the distortions that they're kind of going for with the music would still alarm you in some way. Like your brain would still kind of be in a situation where, because I mean specifically the Psycho theme, you feel like you're getting stabbed while listening to it if you're listening on with no speakers.
And then, as we established in the Psycho episode, like that same composer did stuff for a bunch of Hitchcock's movies, and it's all pretty great. But like Psycho is great in a way that's just like that will stand until the end of time.
I feel like I'm getting stabbed when I listen to Drake.
Well, there's also something about the melody too that reminds me of.
But it's far from over.
The melody too reminds me a bit of Psycho, not the shower scene stabs, but like the score itself. How it had that same kind of ripped kind of play through it, and there's something not dissimilar with Halloween. And I also love the discordant notes that would be played where like, you know, they would just, you know, like they kept more and more discordant notes kept coming, and it was just like would help build the tension beautifully.
I know Vivian Leigh took little Jamie Lee, put her on her lap one day and said, "You have to make be in a horror film with an iconic soundtrack, and that's how you're going to make it." And that was the best advice she ever gave her.
So, all those things, most of those things are true. That's not true, but like I don't think, maybe it is. I don't know.
She did give her some weird advice that I heard in that podcast, but I don't remember what it was. I just remember she gave her some. You know, she gave her some pretty explicit advice on.
Or she said, "Show your tits in an Eddie Murphy film."
So the score,
that's good advice too. That's job security.
Eddie Murphy's the future. That's what she said.
So the score is iconic in a very specific way that I'm not sure if it would have the same cultural significance that if it came out today. Like even if like it was possible to make a movie like Halloween today, I don't think it had the same cultural significance because it hit at a point where there wasn't 1.5 million like musical cues that immediately make you think of the thing. Think of like Beetlejuice. Right, Danny Elfman's score. Like, if you hear that, you're like, "Oh shit!" Like, you imagine Michael Keaton getting up the antics. Oh, there he is! I see him. He's doing the stuff. You know,
don't say it 3 times.
Yeah, don't do it. Don't say it. But like with Halloween specifically, and you know, it's like the minor key stuff. It's like the occasional use of dissonance and things along those lines. There's a thing that like it's not over the top. There's really not that much to it. So much so that in the 2018 movie, it's repurposed a few times, not the least of which, like one time as like a slow, like maudlin sort of like creepy.
I'm glad JG Michael actually watched it because he was like, "Oh, there's not going to be spoilers, right? If I don't get to watch it," and I was like, I can't promise that.
No way. No promises. The movie night extravaganza promise.
It's kind of like it's funny how like suburbia based movies at the time kind of tried to recreate almost like a suburban eeriness or creepiness of like a lot of stillness involved and a lot of like quiet and then like something jumping out, and it's almost like the quiet preempts the possibility of something jumping out and intimidating you at all points, or like people are always afraid of something like that happening, which makes you wonder what that thing that they're always afraid is going to hit them is.
I was going to say
it's a black neighbor.
I was gonna say.
I mean, that's why they're all in white suburban neighborhoods. All the slasher films, because they don't have other things to really be afraid of, except for supernatural shit. Like Candyman's an exception, but like in the hood, like there's real shit to be afraid of, and like Freddy's
like
not
Leprechaun
that
in the Hood.
Classic, by the way.
I'm thinking
I can't
a
help
bit
myself. I'm sorry.
Of Lily
Wait,
Geisler's
aren't I
book.
supposed to go on your podcast with Jason at some point and talk about Leprechaun?
We are going to do that, hopefully.
Okay.
Leprechaun in the Hood and Back to the Hood.
I'm afraid of leprechauns. If I saw a leprechaun, I'd be scared.
Well, I want to see his Amityville.
Do you know what Irish people would do to Italians back in like the 1900s? They'd beat the shit out of them. They were
I'm from Chicago. There's leprechauns everywhere. There are police. They inhabit state office. So I'm only afraid of them because they tax me, but I'm not really that afraid of them.
Real quick, Andrew, you said you wanted to see Amityville in the Hood. That just got released. That's an actual thing now.
Wow.
Yes.
I've been to Long Island. I've seen that.
I've seen Amityville. The house.
I meant Amityville in the Hood. I've been to Long Island. I've seen it.
Real quick, it's interesting since we were talking about the suburban terror element and whatnot. I think one of the things that John Carpenter was trying to get at when he was talking about the Rob Zombie movie is, I think suburban terror works because you don't know everything about these families that live in these houses, and they have this veneer of being, white picket fence, we're respectable. Whereas in the Rob Zombie movie, he just shows you everything. It's like, oh, Michael's dad is a crazy alcoholic, and his mom is, stripping at the Red Rabbit or whatever.
The more you see about Michael Myers, the less scary he gets. I agree with John Carpenter on that point, 100%. And I agree with, I never thought of him as a writer in general, besides like, this is the end, but I think, or whatever, like, this is the end. Fucking Danny McBride as a writer, like, he has a lot of stuff talking about how similar it is to write comedies where you really have an emotional attachment to characters who are making you laugh, but also are relatable in a certain way. And horror movies where you have a connection to characters that are making you scream, like in a certain way, like, or have some kind of at least elicited emotional response. I don't think.
Whereas in Rob Zombie movies, you just hate everyone because you're like, these are all awful human beings.
And that's why that's like the new metal version of Halloween, right? Like it's like no nuance whatsoever, all directionless rage. Fucking sucks.
It's also kind of like the Robert Rodriguez like Machete Kills, like at some point the gore gets so at some point horror gets so over the top that you're kind of just like over it, like you're desensitized to it. I don't think that suburban horror would necessarily work today, but I was thinking about John Waters' like Serial Mom or whatever. Have you ever like with Kathleen Turner? Like I like just that kind of movie. Like I think maybe that was like the death knell for it. Like I don't think Suburbia feels safe now. Suburbia feels disconcerting because there's just been so much, not because of anything that's happened in Suburbia necessarily, but like just how much they've kind of mined that for scares. But
and the
like,
Burbs came out like almost the same year, I believe.
Yeah. Like, and also just the fact that like this generation where things are getting worse, the suburbs and every house looking the same is disconcerting under some kind of consensus when we're
creeps me out.
I
hate it.
I'm not a Tim Burton
under
fan.
some kind of white picket fence consensus. That's not disconcerting necessarily. That's like, oh, that's just happens to be where we live. But at the same time, like, how many people have covered Little Boxes? That song, like, that song is
the
about
theme song of Weeds.
I was going to say this,
also,
and I would have gladly covered that if there was another season and anybody asked, by the way.
But also, like, there's a good Pete Seeger cover. Like, like it's a song that's gone back quite a bit where it's kind of like everyone just kind of gets shoved into little boxes, which kind of reminds you of coffins, at least me personally. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's like your whole life kind of is lived in a coffin, like to me. And
ordinary fucking people, man. I hate them.
Yeah, we needed Catherine on this to talk about the PMC in Halloween, because I'm feeling that right now, like that being constricted into these boxes, like to a lot of people that contributes to a lot of self-hate because you can't meet up to like what the neighbors are doing. And I think that is also kind of an underlying thing of the suburbs, is that like if you look at Nightmare on Elm Street, there's that backstory about the family burning Freddy alive.
Episode.
What was that?
No, I've watched it. I'm just kidding. I said, don't spoil it for me. It's Sunday's episode.
I
but I'm
was
just-
gonna.
Oh, right.
I just
I've
wanted to
watched
add
it, though.
something real quick on this whole note of like suburban terror. There's even like in the buildup of the original Halloween, there's even like hints that they give that, oh, every town has something like this. You know, like when Dr. Loomis and the graveyard caretaker are in the grave looking for Judith Meyer's grave, and he's like, oh, old Charlie Bowles took an axe, and then as he's about to tell this story, he's like, oh, dang kids stole the grave. You know, it's almost like Carpenter's implying it goes on everywhere. Yeah.
They really like blaming kids, which wouldn't make sense until you find out that like everybody on the crew of Halloween was like under 30. Like, you know what I mean? They were either in their 20s, teens, or 30. Like everybody on the set, like there weren't the oldest person on the set was like Donald Pleasance. Like, you know what I mean? And he was only on the set for like 3 days, which I do have.
Do you know why he?
I do.
Do you know why he is alleged? I can go on about this later. Go on.
But no, but
well, I was gonna say real quick that another dang kids moment is the hardware store robbery that they completely brush off.
Right.
Well, it's like, oh yeah, you know, they stole like this, and this. Must be some kids, whatever.
But that kind of makes sense from like a suburban point of view. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
because
it sets the tone. Yeah,
they don't steal money from the cash register. They don't steal, like, you know what I mean? It's not like they steal a bunch of fucking tools that like they're like, oh, they've stolen, like, here's a list of tools that are gonna drain.
They're gonna make a trebuchet or something and shoot off some stuff in the woods.
They're like, oh, someone stole a mask and like some other like William Shatner mask, which why would you want that in the first? Like, you haven't been able to sell that the entire fucking time it's been fucking here.
It's funny too, since you mentioned how
before we get too deep into this, I wanted to play the music thing for Conan because I knew how many people are going to be at this panel, so I have a talk that's kind of each person has I have a J.G. Michael Donald Pleasance section, and I have a Conan music section, and there's capital letters in the Conan music section. Apparently, I really like the word inexorably when I take my ADHD notes.
Hey, we're talking about Michael Myers. Makes sense.
The film's lack of blood was offset by one of its most distinguishing features, Carpenter's brilliantly menacing score.
I had to do the music to Halloween in about 3 days. I had to do the whole score so I could go in and perform it and get out. My dad had taught me 5/4 time on a set of bongos when I was young. So just to teach me some rhythms. They're not 4/4 time, it's off one. And so I decided just to do that as an octave on a piano.
I've never seen a movie completely transform. I learned a great lesson about the power of music and sound effects and sound on that picture. I know it's true of every picture, but in this film, it made a quantum leap. There's no way to describe the difference between. In fact, if you want to explain it to yourself, try watching the movie one time with the sound off.
We used John Carpenter's 1978 film as our creative foundation.
Carpenter made some of my favorite films, and it was nerve-wracking to go in and pitch to one of your idols.
His cell phone goes off while we're talking to him, and it's the theme from Halloween, and that's when I realized where I am and who I'm talking to.
Original Halloween basically had a bunch of equipment and one guy. In this score, you have a bunch of equipment and 3 guys, so it's 3 times the score.
We knew we wanted to use the themes from the first movie. So before we even got started, we organized how we were going to arrange it.
We have the original score, which was done in 1978. So what we're doing is building on that.
The original was done with just my dad working with synthesizers and a piano. So the way that we're doing pays homage to the original and it keeps the feel. I don't think you can have a real Halloween movie without my dad.
Cody's more precise on the keyboard than I am. He knows what's going on.
Kids in my class knew who my dad is, and they said, you got to play the theme for me. So I've been playing that all my life.
We're building with brand new sounds, brand new techniques.
I do the experimenting on my own and then present sounds that I think John might like. So sampling old synths, and then John can play them on the keyboard.
And get approximate sounds of what I dealt with. So that's Daniel's magic. He's the sound man in this whole thing.
We would start And then suddenly 5 hours would have gone by, and it was kind of a stream of consciousness. To work with John, who created the original, and then carry that on to work with David, it's really been a great experience for us.
The sound of Halloween is so iconic. The three of them combined to create a once-in-a-lifetime Carpenter score for us.
All right. Yes.
Awesome. I mean, they're not wrong. Like I was in the studio a few weeks ago, right? The two things that I played on the piano immediately were the Halloween theme song and Lips Incorporated Funky Town. And that's how I roll. It's iconic. And I think it's so cool that
I wonder if either of his kids though ever got laid because they kind of we're like, oh, my dad's John Carpenter, or my God, I think because he also plays with his godson, so it's like, oh, and then Michael Myers shows up and is like, yo, I'm gonna fuck these kids up. They're having sex.
maybe be a disincentive. Who knows? But I think it's so great that in the 2018 movie, he works with his kids on it. Because the thing about John Carpenter, as much as Bernard Herrmann is an incredible composer, and the stuff he did in Psycho and so many of the Hitchcock stuff is amazing. This is the same guy directing the movie, who's an actual musician. Not Robert Rodriguez. Also, I play some shitty blues guitar. It's fine. It's fine for what it is. But John Carpenter's a legit could be in the goblin echelon of people that people pay attention to.
Brian Eno level, right?
He's gobbling up all those. He's gobbling up all those notes.
It's funny because I think he has actually said before when people ask him how did you create the soundtrack for Halloween? I think he has actually said, I just got really stoned and was playing with my keyboard. Yeah. He is a big stoner, so I actually believe that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, listen, he's making a movie. He's making his own movie. He has complete creative control over it. You know what I mean? And then
I would do that in a heartbeat. You kidding me? Hell yeah, let's go, baby.
Yeah, they keep hiring Hans Zimmer though.
Yeah, exactly. That's important.
Yeah, I mean, wow, we should probably talk about that someday. There's actually this one YouTube channel that had a video about how music scores in modern times, especially in the Marvel universe, are just absolute crap. There's nothing memorable at all in terms of music, simply because they're just not focusing on the melody line at all, and they're just interested in giving you some kind of earthquake level experience. And they're constantly just shaking stuff or rattling stuff through heavy bass and whatnot. And a lot of Hans Zimmer is just weird, these experimental sounds that he has to create some epic soundscape for.
Hey, Hans
It's
Zimmer.
yo,
I always tell people,
everybody
I feel
everybody on this pod, we have a lot of guests, but if you wanted to come on this podcast and just talk about your scores, I wouldn't say no.
Andy he's probably heard the Dune episode, and that's probably not going to happen. I talk too much trash. But.
That's a really good point, though, Karthik.
I'm just calling back to the Dune episode where I just did that.
Unsolicited rant from yours truly about Hans Zimmer for the same reasons Karthik mentioned.
Well, it's true though. All the I always tell people, I'm all the sounds for movies now. It's everything's a callback to Inception. With the brrr sound and there's not, it's very homogenized now. I feel in Halloween 2018 I was very excited because of the soundtrack being Carpenter and his kids, and I think it's something different from what we see in a lot of horror movies today and just movies in general.
Well, because it's referential to what you love, the thing you identify with it, but there's also stuff.
He also came up with a different riff now that you've seen it, I can spoil something that I wanted to talk about. When I think Allison, the granddaughter, sees the lame ass nerd character's body or whatever, there's a different riff, famously a different riff on the exact same Psycho theme. It's kind of amazing that they came up with that, because it's a sonic experience that he had to be at least commenting on the screenplay itself, saying oh, I like this part of it, I don't like this part of it. But then also to have him on the score is kind of a brilliant idea. There's something though, as someone that wants to be a filmmaker, as someone that wants to be a film director and always will be, like always will want that, and probably at some point maybe will be. Like I've produced short documentaries, whatever. But like I get seriously inspired by stories of people that can both direct and do the score, or direct and do something. You know what I mean? Like the fact that people are able to create these things, because you never, like, as much as you want to say, oh, I'm going to plan for this, I'm going to plan for all of these different things, when it's real stories that like at least inspire me, like low budget, movies of whatever type. And John Carpenter did a few before doing this that weren't necessarily like what, like he didn't feel like they hit the way he wanted them to. Probably now they maybe have, but like, like
you're seeing the Big Trouble in Little China theme. Big Trouble in Little China. Like you're saying that didn't slam?
That was once John Carpenter. That was once John Carpenter could grab whatever.
Look, cocaine, man, cocaine.
Well, I was going to say too, Forrest. What's really crazy about the soundtrack for this 2018 version is that track, "The Shape Stalks Allison," which is the track you were referring to. It's just as iconic to me as the original now. Like it's something completely different, but it just hits really well.
It slams in a way that, like, Forrest, what you're mentioning too, like I could say, 2 words to that mythos, which is like Dead Man. That's just, it's ostensibly Neil Young fucking around on a guitar to the score, and it's perfect. It's perfect. It's exactly
I told you that I had a Dead Man poster in my room 5 years before I ever watched Dead Man, which I enjoyed as a movie, but my dad had toured Jim Jarmusch's house and came back with a Dead Man poster that he had bought at the video store. Not from Jim Jarmusch, I wish. But he bought at the video.
Can I say I'm disappointed that stupid fucking white man has not been made into a meme yet? By the way,
so I have 2 more. I have 2. Like we're getting close to this 2-hour mark where I feel like people don't even like want to watch it anymore. So we're probably gonna go over it, but I have 2 more videos to comment on. The first one is I promised JG Michael that I would play this. That would play something to do with Donald Pleasance. So this is the story of Donald Pleasance fucking with John Carpenter, number 1, and also agreeing to finally be on the movie. And I don't know. I just found this. I found this level of of awareness, I guess, of your craft, and this level of curiosity about the director that you're about to work with. I mean, because he had been in over 100 movies at this time. I think it was like 108 movies or something that he was in. So
not just movies though. I mean, he was a stage thespian. He had won awards for being in Harold Pinter's The Caretaker. Huge name within the worlds of stage and cinema.
Yeah. So the fact that he's still in the story testing the people that he's going to work for enough to be like, to be fucking with them is like interesting.
Actor Donald Pleasance came in for 5 shooting days to portray the Shape's nemesis, Dr. Sam Loomis.
Donald Pleasance was just an amazing actor. He's the kind of guy who just knew the character. We only had 5 days with him. He was just really great. He gave 150%. And he was like the elder on the set. Those days, kids making movies was rare. And so I think he was just astonished at our ages and the excitement and the freshness that we brought to the process.
John and Debra called me one day and said to me that they were all set on offering Christopher Lee the part of Dr. Loomis. I said, what do you want to do? Make another Hammer movie?
Christopher Lee turned us down. Peter Cushing turned us down. And Donald agreed, to my shock. And we sat down to have lunch, and he says, I don't understand this script. I don't like this script. I don't know who my character is. The only reason I'm doing this is because my daughter thought your first movie was cool. So tell me why I'm doing this. I'm scared to death. Oh, my God. And I only realized later when we became friends that what Donald likes to do is he wants to find out how much you want to do the movie. He wants to find out how passionate I am, you are, as the director. And so that's his little trick. Donald, his action is he runs and he shoots the Shape, blows him out of a window. On the set, I was shooting his reaction. So he says, I can play this. What do you want me to do? I can play this 2 ways. I can play this, oh my God, he's gone. Or I knew this would happen. I thought, boy, that's interesting. I don't know. Can you do it both ways for me? And clearly he knew what he should have done. He knew how he should have played it ahead of time, which it was, I knew this would happen, because, oh my God, he's gone was way too much. But I realized that Donald actually gave me the choice. You see, he left the decision in my hands, which is the mark of a great actor.
While Halloween was Pleasance's 108th film or TV appearance, it was his co-star's first movie role.
I remember the first day we shot, I remember exactly what we shot. And
Yes, I remember too.
As
if it was yesterday. I was not 1 year old yet, but I remember it very well.
I was Michael Myers. Friend of show.
Friend of show, Michael Myers.
I really want to talk about this at some point, but it's like a long clip that I found. The original friend that they had play Michael Myers, who played him in the 2018 one when it's not the old guy with the actual face, like when he's just Nick Castle, I think. He's like, his father was like a famous choreographer that like trained Fred Astaire, and every single person has asked him like, hey, does your nimbleness, like as the son of a, like a famous choreographer, like affect the way that you played Michael Myers? And he's like, no. And then you talk to anybody else and they're like, oh, he was just so nimble. And I have like a
which is a nice thing for people to say about you, frankly.
Yeah, it is, but like it's also funny that like they picked Michael Myers for being nimble in Halloween, and then obviously like the Rob Zombie one, like it makes sense why he's so upset that like it's a 300-pound, 6 foot, whatever, like 7 foot. You know what I mean? Like because the guy that he hired initially was like dancing across the lawn, like, you know what I mean? Like, and then all of a sudden it's like doom, doom, doom. But I mean, America's just gone to shit, so.
Well, like I said, that's the new metal Halloween, and that's all there needs to be said about it.
But interesting enough, Halloween 2, they had Dick Warlock as the shape. And,
astounding name.
Yes, and friend of show. He's coming out Thursday, I believe.
Yeah.
And
he's one of those left flank vets.
Yes.
Yeah.
But no, this Dick Warlock was Kurt Russell's body double, stunt double in a lot of films. But anyways, so in part 2 he looks a lot smaller because he's Dick Warlock, who appears this big on your screen.
I'm very upset that now I keep picturing the Dick Warlock I know as.
So before you get the next clip for us, I was going to ask real quick.
I put it up for you to comment on. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say,
Warlock, bro. We're rolling,
that covered everything with Donald Pleasance.
Other nights I roll. No.
What I liked about Donald Pleasance in the role of Loomis is, he had taken so many roles before. He was a big, stage actor. Like I said, Harold Pinter's The Caretaker. He won awards for that. But what's interesting is when you hear them talk about Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing playing the role, I know people that would say, oh, wouldn't that be amazing? And I'm like, I don't think they could have done it the same way. As you watch Donald Pleasance in that original movie, he's like sweating profusely. Go on.
No, Christopher Lee does not sound like a good choice for
he would have been too confident in the role, whereas Donald Pleasance, you think he's just as crazy as Michael, because he's running around sweating and spouting crazy lines about pure evil. And you're like, what is this guy as crazy as Michael?
From the bushes? Yeah. I mean,
yeah. You're like,
hey, get away from there.
And then he smiles. He does that little smile, like.
He also keeps telling the cops.
And then the sheriff shows up right behind him. He's like, oh fuck. Oh, hey, what's up?
Right. He's almost as neurotic and frenetic as you would think Michael is. Yeah.
Right.
He also keeps telling the cops not to tell the townspeople that there's a serial killer. But then it's like, oh, there's a serial killer. Like, all right, prove it. And then they're like, all right, well, we're going to alert the town. He's like, no, don't alert the town. That is a fucking insane thing. Like, if you think that there's a serial killer that you can't tame in a town, be like, no, tell everyone in town. Like, be careful. And then they're like, oh, all right, well.
They reference that in 2018 because the new Loomis is like, I'm a doctor. Go to your houses.
And then, well, I want to talk about the 2018 version of this because
we'll get to that.
JG Michael and I were talking about this. Like we were having a conversation about like whether it's reactionary, like which I mean I guess I agree with you that it is, But like I think it's also kind of this victim blaming, or like there's not like the desire to not take the victim seriously. And I think that maybe the fact that they put it onto liberal podcast hosts to start with, which is hilarious that the really annoying Halloween Unmasked girl gets very upset and yells at Danny McBride about the fact that she's like, "What, you don't like podcasters? You think we're all like in that podcast?" But like I think that the idea of true crime, or like I think that it's kind of an amazing part of Halloween 2018 that like everybody now at some point, because they've erased the sequels, and the sequels kind of continue to play on our desire to know some kind of logic. We want them to give them an argument. As they but no, so we want some kind of logic or rationality for why somebody is going around killing people. Like we crave that. You know what I mean? We don't
like I've always been sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, we don't want them to be human, and that gets touched on by John Carpenter a lot. Like we don't want that person to be human. We don't want to know that someone is just strolling into a suburban neighborhood and just killing people for no reason. We want to know like, oh, well, they must remind like him of their sister or be their sister, or there must be some family connection. Like we want to put it in a box because we don't want to think that it could happen to us.
Yeah, he just likes killing people.
Yep.
But that's not something that like an audience wants to compute. And
I'm kind of like a little confused about what the killer is still like supposed to signify in a more real world term, other than like just the force of nature aspect, right? Like in this case, a complete loose cannon, nothing, the possibility of danger, whatever, right? Like it's not really like anything concrete. But what is also kind of fascinating is how, as you're pointing out, true crime is such a significant part of culture because of like this notion that like I've heard all the time, which is like that a girl hopes that her date is not a serial killer, and it's like it's such a common thing.
Then he eats a whole bowl of cereal, and she's just like, Jesus fucking Christ.
But I've always been like curious to know, because like this is translated across contexts as well, like which is not in India you kind of like actually the date is not the one who's like a serial killer or anything like that. It's usually like somebody who's like a taxi driver or something like that ends up being that kind of character. So it culturally did not
talk about Robert De Niro like that.
But like it culturally did not translate, and I've always been fascinated. And watching this movie, I kind of couldn't help also make the connection to another fucked up child movie, which is The Omen. And like I kind of like Mike Myers almost seems like Damien grown up, although they kind of tried that with the movie as well. Like but like there is no morality tale here. But at the same time, it's kind of interesting how like the character of the guy who shoots Mike Myers eventually is kind of similar to an exorcism as well. Like it's kind of like someone casting an evil spirit away or something.
Look, it's based on The Exorcist and it's based on Psycho. Like those are movies they're taking inspiration from. I think that there's a point of it where they're trying in the 2018 one, they're trying to strip a lot of things away from the motivation, I guess, of Michael Myers, because it seems like John Carpenter's thought was, wow, there's a very innocent babysitter that gets that gets saved, but then there's a bunch of other normal babysitters that are like acting like everybody involved in it, like a bunch of normal babysitters that are acting like regular teenagers that get murdered. Isn't that scary?
Yeah.
And the fact that But the fact that it's not taken as chaos theory, it's taken as, oh, wow, they fucked and now they got killed, I think is something that scares someone that's trying to write a script that actually, I guess, that is feminist, that actually erases that thought from your mind. Of course, it becomes completely like the opposite, where there's just no, you can't attribute whatever the crimes are to anything else. And they erase the fact that other directors have taken over this, other writers have taken over this and said, oh, well, it's his sister, it's this, there's a family connection. Like they've erased all of it. and you could argue, I think that they've gone maybe too far in the other direction at some time, like at some point. You know what I mean? Like it's sexless to the point where like you're just like, oh well, Gen Z doesn't have sex. Like Gen Z is far more concerned with whatever else. They don't have a chance to have sex, and then Michael kills them anyway.
The thing for me that felt sort of reactive or reactionary about the 2018 Halloween was essentially Laurie Strode's whole worldview, and I understand it comes out of her own trauma, the character's trauma, but her whole worldview is sort of justified.
Yeah, she's right.
Her daughter keeps saying to her, but there's love and understanding in the world. And Laurie's like, no, we have to be prepared to die at any moment and we could get killed. And she's right at the end. Like, Michael comes back.
The whole lifetime she has, like, that we don't see, she's being told she's crazy, and she's 100% correct about all of it.
I mean, but it's also the viewpoint that elects Joe Biden, I think, right? Like, at the end of the day. Like it's like saying, hey, like you have to elect the guy that's like knows how things are done, etc. It's a conservatism, I feel like, at the end of the day.
I mean,
trauma-based conservatism. Yeah, I agree with that.
And Corn Pop, he was a serial killer, went around the fucking suburbs. Corn Pop was just grabbing people's fucking leg hair. No, I think that I agree to some extent. I think that they're kind of it's before Biden, they're riding high on this Me Too movement. You know what I mean? Like, and it's obviously like Bloomhouse Productions is like, trying to make some kind of like, they're trying to make message pictures, I guess. Not to be confused with The Message, which is the same producer that did this movie, making the story of Muhammad as a movie funded by the Libyan government. But this is a message picture of some kind. It's
in the new one, it's got some wokeisms, right? Like you have like the teen couple going to the costume prom as Bonnie and Clyde, but they're reversing the costumes, right?
Yeah.
There's go on. I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say there's just certain like wokeisms that are in there where it's like it seems very aware of being in the time that it's in now, not being 1978. I don't think that's
very aware, and it seems very aware of this concept of psychic damage.
Right? Exactly, because it wanted to focus more on the psychic damage than the admittedly the trope of like if you have sex, like you played the Scream clip, right? Like if you have sex, you're dead, like whatever. Like that was never the point of Halloween. That was never like the point of it. Like Michael just kills, and like
it's that I think there's a level of guilt that follows John Carpenter, that follows Debra Hill, who has now passed away sadly from cancer. But throughout John Carpenter's career, I guess, and that's also followed a lot of other directors that have worked in this genre, and because it's very the idea of it that happened, as JG said, like it happened very quickly. Like the response to it happened very quickly because it's a very shallow, the reading of Halloween. And even like they've even regretted the fact that Halloween 2 they didn't want to really make, but they kind of promised some kind of career thing, and then they made The Fog, and then The Fog didn't get to the people that claimed that John Carpenter really promised them money, which was the original producer for this that came up with the idea of the Halloween part of it. Like Halloween 2 is made to satisfy the right people monetarily, and then they felt like maybe that contributed even more to the genesis of the slasher genre. So there's like a level of guilt that follows this movie, I think, and the fact that nobody really has sex in it reflects a level of guilt from people that feel like they need to erase the wrongs that they've done to a psychic, I guess, the psychic part of a generation. At the same time, though, I think that you can go too far with that, and then everyone's like, well, I don't want to watch your own, like something you should talk about with a therapist. Like, I don't want to watch that in a movie. I liked Halloween 2018. I'm not saying it was that, but like, that's like, there's some point where you're trying to erase the wrongs that you've caused so much that it's just like, this is not like a story that I really want to watch. Like, I want people to get, like, I don't want people to get slashed. Like, I understood from the point of Halloween, like, I didn't feel like it was, like, jokingly I did, like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, people really want to have sex and then they're killed. Like, but I don't feel like that was done in a misogynistic way. I'm not sitting there thinking like, oh, well, slasher movies are done in this way. Like, well, look at all the psychic problems caused in this specific like situation. Like the fact that you're fully going back on that and going like, well, look, now nobody has sex, is like, that feels like there's some kind of balance. It feels like there could be a balance where real people like have sex sometimes. Like real people aren't like, oh, let me go in this room while I'm babysitting and have sex while this kid is here. Oh, hey kid, I'm stuck in the thing. Well, you've been stuck in plenty of places. Looks like there's some kind of balance between that and like, like your straight A student babysitter that like her boyfriend comes in with a tattoo that's clearly supposed to signify losing his virginity, and she's like, oh well, I'm gonna dry hump you. Like it seems like there's some kind of
total beta move.
You get it tattooed before it happens. Wow, I like tattoos that happen after it happens.
God damn, we almost spent an entire episode without doing it. I
had a lot of problems last night watching the scene in Tropic Thunder where he's like, that's the theme song from the Jeffersons. I was thinking, they don't make a theme song anymore.
The Jeffersons classic theme song. Everyone remembers it.
Moving on up.
Moving on up. Everyone's trying to do it, folks.
You know what? My father owns my dad.
Sherman Hemsley, big Gong fan. Gong, prog band. You familiar? It's great.
I was going to say the thing that stood out for me with the 2018 movie, or one of the things that I was like, oh, that's not. I mean, I think there is a lot of wokeisms in it, but I also think there's things that, like with the podcasters, they go and meet Laurie Strode, and they're like, I think we can set both of you free because forgiveness and understanding and all this stuff, and then they just get slaughtered, right? Like dumb liberals, you can't rehab anyone. And I thought that was kind of interesting.
There's a very specific thing where they aggressively come into her house, offering her money.
They're being super aggressive to let us in. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're offering her money, and then they're super aggressive about being like, "Well, you lost your kid." You know what I mean? So they're
that's true. Yeah. They're sort of insincere. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's more than just insincere. They want an explanation. I don't think that they want to redeem Michael. But like the rehabilitation part of it that you were talking about earlier is correct. Like there has to be some kind of rehabilitation. It can't be that this person is so much of a sociopath that there's no hope for them. Like it has to be some other, like they have to be coming up with another story. And within that though, they completely victim blame her. And I don't like that part of the movie really, because I think that it's a little bit heavy handed where she's like, time's up, and like lets them out of the apartment. Like I feel like she's being a little bit too like, let's say maybe like, oh, you got hurt by Michael? Me too. Like, you know what I mean? But I understand the point that they're trying to make, which is like, victims in this situation. Like, someone can literally have murdered, count like 5 people in a house for no reason. And then, like, there are still, like, people in the media, which I don't think is necessarily a fact that registers with, like, working class people. But, like, in the media, like, they're still coming to someone's house being like, listen, like, there has to be some kind of way to redeem this person, or there has to be.
It's also mirrored in that scene with Vicky's stoner boyfriend, right? Where he's like, "It's really that big of a deal? I mean, he killed a few people back then. It's not like there's worse things that happen today."
Well, I think that line serves a different purpose. I think that line serves to, number one, as all of the writers have said, call attention to like school shootings and like mass shootings. And the fact that now, like, they wanted to justify the fact that there was very bloody, because the original Halloween had no blood in it, right? Like, or didn't have much blood in it. So they wanted to justify the fact.
Right. It was in a way that, like, people, again, remember when we did Psycho, Jana Leigh was talking about how she would talk to people that were insistent upon the fact that they saw the knife go in and blood spurting out, and so because it was so intense. It's
and all of the producers and John Carpenter and his girlfriend, like the entire everyone involved in the original Halloween, idolized Psycho as a movie, which I do too. Like, don't get me wrong, it's an amazing movie, but so they were trying to make something close to that rather than making something full of blood that So I think they wanted to justify that this generation, I mean, number one, this generation doesn't have sex apparently, according to them, but also this generation, is way more expectant of violence and blood. So I think when they wanted to erase the sequels, so it's kind of, I think that the first line is brilliant. It was like, oh, wasn't it his sister? And like, so he plays to the Halloween 2 plot twist. And then she goes, oh no, so people just made that up to try to like make sure that, you know, everyone knew that, like, to make sure that everyone kind of had an explanation. So they kind of destroy all of the sequels with that one line. But then they're like, but then he's like, oh, well, you know, it's just 5 people. Like today, that doesn't really mean anything. I didn't really like that line as much because it's just like, oh, well, look at this generation today. Like there's a lot of mass shootings. Like I don't like that part as much. But I'm also probably, you know, within that generation that had a lot of mass shootings. So that doesn't necessarily make me feel confident about my own, you know, like.
It's funny too, because for as much as it sort of destroys the sequels and says these never happened, it has a lot in common with the sequels that were mainly produced by Mustafa Akkad up until I think it was the 6th movie where Akkad sort of got pushed out by Miramax because
Mustafa Akkad, friend of Gaddafi,
this is true. But
there's a really fucking awkward moment in that Halloween Unmasked podcast. She is not very good at you know. Come on this podcast, but
no critique. Here's the point. Yeah.
No, so she very awkwardly asked the son of Mustafa Akkad, who was killed in a terrorist attack.
Mustafa was killed in a terrorist. Malik is still alive. Yeah.
No, so she asked his son that's still alive, or else it would be weird that she was asking him. Like, did Gaddafi fund Halloween? And he's like, how the fuck would I know that? He funded the message, but like he didn't, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But there's a very awkward, she's like, I've come to this conclusion that maybe the Libyan government, and he's like, sure, maybe. Like, and then she's like, there's this awkward pause after that. And I'm like, yeah, why would you ask the person?
Yeah, like, what did you think was going to happen there? Yeah.
What I was going to say is, you know, while there is gore in Halloween 2018, it's pretty minimal. You don't even see a lot of kills. And I think Akkad with the sequels, especially number 4, and then a little bit with number 5, he wanted to keep it in the realm of first, like, Michael is a human being, will hint him being supernatural, and also he wanted it to be more as a suspense series rather than like a straight up gore fest in the way that, you know, the Freddy or the Friday the 13th films had become. And I think there's a lot in common with that in 2018.
You know, I said I wouldn't want him to be supernatural. No, but like, yeah, look, a lot of his but all of his work was kind of, you know, as a director, and supposedly like an amazing director, like supposedly like a Lawrence of Arabia style director, was aimed at pushing, like, you know, I mean at least making the stories of Muslims known in America, like, you know what I mean, like making those religious stories known, which you can't really hate on because of the fact that like literally every other fucking story that was put onto film for a very long time, which is like a Christian, like, oh, here's what happened in the Bible story. You know what I mean? Like, we literally have The Last Temptation of Christ, like, as a as a movie that came out within like everybody's lifetime. You know what I mean? So like, it's, I don't know. It's a little bit ridiculous that like that needs to get pointed out, that like, you know, if there's a similar type of movie with like the story of Muhammad put on film, like, oh, you know who funded it? Like, you know who probably fucking funded The Last Temptation of Christ? Like,
right.
I don't know. So I don't know. I find that like it's hard to listen to certain things where like, you know, he's both being glorified as a director, like, oh, he was a great director, and also being like, well, the stories that he grew up on, that like, you know, that he felt from a religious level, like he was telling those stories, and it's like a little like the Halloween Unmasked podcast kind of made me feel like that. It's like, all right, well, do you want nobody to tell those stories? Like,
did you send the makers of that podcast hate mail over this? You sound very upset.
I'm not upset, but like, I don't know, the guy died in a terrorist attack. Like, I feel I cut pieces of the podcast to play on this one. Like, it's not like I was sitting
It's
there.
obviously not that upset with them.
Yeah, no, it's not like the Hans Zimmer
time.
thing.
Yeah.
Well, I also cut clips of Hans Zimmer, but we just didn't get time. We didn't get to them. So
Hans Zimmer,
I liked
composer, never allowed on the show ever, never happened.
I, as someone that kind of is trying to fill the space as like specifically doing film stuff and Kenzo clips, apparently, But no, like specifically film stuff that wants to get away from maybe the more, in a lot of cases, postmodernist readings. I mean, sometimes I do enjoy postmodernist readings. Sometimes I enjoy postmodernist film, but like the more aggressively Western readings of a lot of things kind of get to me. Or like the fact that like someone like Gaddafi might have funded a movie, and then all of a sudden like Gaddafi got killed very publicly by our government. Like maybe it's not a time to like say to an audience like Gaddafi might have funded it. Like that kind of upsets me in some ways. I mean, I've watched enough Adam Curtis to feel
Well, I mean,
No, I would agree with that, and I mean,
yeah, I agree.
one of the things, real quick, one of the things I really liked about Halloween 2018 as a fan of the series is that at the end they dedicate the movie to Mustafa Akkad, because people really forget he was very, very hands-on with that series, and he would not let certain sequels get made that were
$300,000 for the original.
Wouldn't have happened without him. 100%.
He literally, John Carpenter said, "Hey, I need $300,000 to make this movie. It's about babysitter murders." And you can literally watch the documentary where Mustafa Akkad talks about it. He's like, well, everybody in America, like every kid in America has had a babysitter. Like that makes sense as a universal movie. But also he's a producer at that point. He wants to be a director. To me, that's something very personal. Like it's a creative spirit that's just kind of forced into handling money when it's not just stories about his religious faith. He gets money when it involves stories about his religious faith, but he wants to be like a Lawrence of Arabia style director. Like he wants to film these huge epic like films that maybe he can't get financed. And it's like, for me, that kind of, I feel that like, I want to be a film director. So understanding that like someone that was a producer that, you know, decided whether to green light something or not, like you're also taking someone's dream that is a similar dream that you have and like putting it into a like how much money can we really afford to spend on this person's dream? But it's the same dream you have. You know what I mean? Like that's emotionally, I feel that on a gut level.
The other, I was just going to add to that real quick. The thing people have to remember about film
I
production.
dedicate this podcast to him.
Let's do that. But also, when you're talking about like, oh, did Gaddafi fund this movie? I mean, I've talked to people that have worked with Oliver Stone about this, Eric Hamburg particularly. If you are in movies and you're getting produced at that sort of level, your movies, you are probably getting produced by some very shady figures. Yeah. A lot of movies are like that. Yeah.
Look at like, so not the book, not the movie Get Shorty, but especially the TV series Get Shorty does a great job of basically showing, oh, this is an incredible opportunity if you're trying to launder money, you know, and it's a fantastic, I think it's the best Get Shorty, including the book, for a number of reasons, but not the least of which is like, oh, this is like kind of a good example of like an indictment of Hollywood, the player style, but also showing that like this shit really happens. Like, I mean, and it's not just movies. You want to talk about Benihana? Yeah, let's talk about Benihana, man. You know,
no, I mean, some of my favorite movies actually were produced
never been able to afford to go there.
You know, it was all money laundering schemes because, like, early
meant to lose money, man. That's how you
all the Hong Kong action flicks that I love, like that's all the mob trying to wash their money. We wouldn't have Jackie Chan or Steven Seagal if it wasn't for the mob.
Yeah, thank you, Christopher Moltisanti. Go ahead.
By the way, base Jackie Chan, because he's stood up for the CCP since Hong Kong has been returned to China, like in ways that have made some people on like Hong Kong / like American Hong Kong Reddit very angry. They're like, oh my god, I can't believe it. He's admitting he's Chinese. It's like, yeah, dude. That's what
he also knows how to. He has to make movies and like, you know, he's in.
First of all, how dare you? Secondly,
Vice put out a thing that's like people are angry at Jackie Chan for these comments, and it's like sometimes they're like, if it's Vice, it's like, you know, I'm like, all right, well, I'm curious, and it's like Jackie Chan being like, well, you know, I mean, I'm a Chinese citizen now. Like the CCP has some good points, and they're like, do you know what people think about that? And I'm like, that the government that you like your government that you're saying that they have some good points. Like what am I missing about this? Like,
yeah,
we want the Hong Kong democracy struggle like that existed a couple years ago. we want it to go as right as possible to embrace like U.S. hegemony, which I think that if it doesn't, is probably a good thing. I don't think we need more U.S. hegemony. I personally.
Full up. Way too much hegemony.
I mean, I'd like to
is
see an
which
independent
one?
Hong Kong, but that's just me. But that doesn't mean that I don't, I don't understand, I don't feel like I understand, I'm trying to get
I like
this
how
out.
when you had your hand here, by the way, it looked like you were leaning on Jamie Lee Curtis's nose.
Traditional old Loomis move, old school.
But here's my last clip for this episode.
Yeah.
Are we gonna do the thing that we started?
Yeah, no, don't worry, we're doing the thing. But that's not a clip. But anyway, I'm going to play me having sex, and no, Michael Myers is coming to my house tonight. No, so all right, so I have this. This is from the making of documentary, the making of my personal porn documentary, and it's just talking about how the Michael Myers character came to be in the original Halloween. And I thought this was interesting. They go into the William Shatner mask, which is pretty funny. And let's go.
Halloween's villain was more than just a killer. It was a supernatural hurricane.
What I thought about doing was not giving the antagonist, Michael Myers, really much of a backstory, but kind of kicking him up into a legendary kind of situation where he's much more like an element of nature. Because I thought that would be more frightening rather than personifying, make him almost a force. So then the mask, which ties in with Halloween, would blank out his human features for most of the film, making him then just some sort of force of evil that is irrational, unstoppable.
But the shape had to be more than just some guy in a fright mask.
Nick Castle had been a schoolmate of John's at USC.
Nick had a wife and I believe 2 babies. I know there was at least one. It may have been 2. And they came by every day at lunch. And, here's this guy with this oversuit on, and the mask was just always lying next to him. He'd put it on and go do the work.
His portrayal of Shape. Now remember, the Shape has no lines in the movie, none whatsoever. It's just sort of a mask, and it's a presence that we wanted. On Halloween 2, we had a stuntman play the role, and even though he studied the Nick Castle kind of feeling, he could never quite get it.
I think they're trying to make it more important than it really is. I actually just walk. John actually did say something. I like the way you walk. I think it'll be good. Now, maybe John thinks of me as a serial killer. I don't know. I remember I'm about to walk across the street in the first shot, and I realize he has not told me anything about what I'm supposed to do as this character. So I came up to him and basically asked him, what's my motivation? As the Shape walking across. How do you want me to walk? How do you want me to, am I supposed to be this or that? And he said, Nick, just walk.
Nick was suggesting all sorts of attributes that he could play to this character, thinking, okay, is he really a psychopath? Is he really crazy? Is he somebody who's insane? Does he have any of the kind of schizophrenic movements that we kind of associate with mental illness? And I just told him to be simple with it. Basically, when he's watching something or someone, stand still, just move very gracefully, because Nick can do that.
I think he really gave the movie something. I think there's little moments that he does in the movie that are really special that, take it away from being just some sort of thug in a suit. He really kind of, at one point, he tips his head and kind of looks at his handiwork.
And I remember when I stabbed the kid up against the refrigerator or something, boom, stabbed the kid, and I remember that direction. John said, tilt your head this way, tilt your head that way, like you're looking at him. And everyone loves that.
Well, he was so agile and subtle.
One of the most famous faces in horror almost had a completely different look.
John assigned me the task of finding some choices for the Halloween mask.
And I picked up two that looked like really good, legit choices. One was an Emmett Kelly mask. Emmett Kelly was a classic clown with a big red nose, stupid hair, and a big smile, big blue smile on his face. And I thought, how frightening, how grotesque.
The first Michael Myers mask was actually a William Shatner from Star Trek mask that we kind of changed a lot. We opened up the eye sockets, we changed the hair, we did something to the skin tones to make it this white, pasty kind of mask. And it was kind of scary because it was sort of featureless. And that's what we're going for.
And first it was the Emmett Kelly mask, and he came out of the bathroom wearing it, and everyone agreed it was pretty eerie. It was strange. It was weird, made you uncomfortable, and you knew that was a scary situation. Went back, came out with the other mask, and a cold chill ran up everybody's spine. It was so scary looking. It was so demented. It was so sick that we knew
We knew it was time to end the clip.
Oh, we knew. Starlog. You know, we're out here. We were
Captain's log. June 4th, 1979.
Captain's log. I like
Podcast is entered, second hour.
I like the Family Guy version of William Shatner where he's just like Captain's log, and every part of his body just keeps like. Yeah, but I don't know. I this is like. Number one, I think the fact that Nick Castle's father, which I don't think they touched on in this clip, but there was like during that podcast, there were parts of it where they talked about how his father had trained Fred Astaire. Like that's how nimble genetically he was. So every time someone's like, "Oh well," like in a similar way to the fact that Jamie Lee Curtis was the like in a similar way to the fact that Jamie Lee Curtis was like the daughter of famous actors, like he was the son of like famous dancers.
Yeah, not a 300-pound dude as it turns out. So
nope.
Yeah.
No, and it was weird because like Charlie Sheen and Emilio Estevez were boom mic operators and gaffers in this movie.
And that's why every boom mic was just tilted a little bit with cocaine.
Yes, it was tiger's blood.
Karthik, I know you need to head out and eat, which I haven't really. I haven't eaten much today either. I like ate half a bowl of ramen before doing this. I've had a day where 9 a.m. tomorrow I have to help my mom get her like craft. Her craft set up together for this Sheep and Wolf Festival. So, I had to get like my 3 episodes that I'm doing for the rest of the week, like done last night. So I stayed up to do that.
So you want to do like top 5 one-liners and then closing thoughts and
yeah.
Out of here?
Don't worry, I'm not forgetting. I'm not doing the. It is a good bit. I made entire graphics for that bit, so like the chances that I forget that bit are, 50-50.
Next to me, you're really tired or you're really hungry, and you are both of those things. So.
Well, no. So Karthik, I'll see you on Thursday. We're gonna do Tropic Thunder, which I'm pretty hyped for. I think I have an outline for that now.
With Halloween 2's Dick Warlock.
Yeah.
We'll ask him about how you felt about playing, Mike Myers in some of these movies.
And they were asking me how I felt about doing blackface, and I said, "Hey, how do you know about that? That was high school. It was a play. It was a whole new world."
Look, man, you never go full.
It wasn't actually blackface. I was playing Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, no, you never go full Justin Trudeau.
Justin Trudeau, I'm saying.
You never go full Canadian.
Yeah.
Watching Black Christmas. I remember I messaged I mean Andy and Conan both, but I messaged them and I was like, someone's about to apologize or something, and I was joking. And then all of a sudden, the guy's like, "Oh," like sarcastic, "I'm sorry," and I was the boyfriend, like when the father of the girl that gets murdered gets hit with a snowball from one of the kids. He's like a dick about it.
Ooh,
And
sorry.
then the boyfriend's like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and I was like, "Oh fuck, I kind of predicted this." Good dialogue.
Yeah,
I hope you get some food and you don't,
Yeah, no, it's just that I have an early start tomorrow, but yeah, I mean, I can't believe that I'm like about to miss the Letterboxd kind of clips, but I still haven't really explored the platform that much. So I guess like I'm gonna see from the video how it looks, and then like from the next time, maybe for Tropic Thunder, I'll like try to see if I can like come up with something for Letterboxd.
Well, if you want to take over Conan's role, or if we want to get him to pre-record, a Tropic Thunder graphics of this type, we've kind of created, for this specific movie at least, for this specific franchise at least, of a format of
yeah, but this is like SNL year one. We're like making the rule book as we go.
Right.
Well, it's kind of like Halloween. You're making the rule book as you go.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
Very
that's
much
why
like
when
that.
I have sex, everybody dies.
All right. On that note, I will.
That's the one, huh? That's it.
Yeah.
All right.
Last thing before you go, I really wanted to get somebody, like a random person that nobody knows, to have the Michael mask and the full outfit on, and then I was gonna just keep trying to throw it back to them, like ask them questions, just have them do the heavy breathing. So like I thought, like, because we had like a really active panel, I knew that was gonna be the case. I thought it'd be hilarious if like there was like all of us and then someone that nobody else on the panel knew that just said Michael Myers that was wearing the full costume. And I'd be like,
is there anyone like that right now?
Well,
They can shut up for 5 seconds. Not on this panel.
Dick Warlock tried to volunteer, but we had already planned out the show too much at that point.
It would be a great visual gag, though. It would be a great visual.
It would, So
I think it'd even play on audio only, but hey, it's what it is.
I could have done it and then not had a host, I guess. They're going. All right.
Yeah, because you're not doing enough. Yeah, do more stuff.
Yeah. I need to produce something else while I produce this, and you know what I mean. Like I need to just. Doc Ock is back, baby. All right. Good night, Karthik.
Good night, everyone. I'll see you guys another time.
Always a pleasure.
Yes. Great seeing you again.
All right.
Finally. No.
All white guys.
At last, we can speak freely.
What white boy? Wait, it's not white boy summer anymore. White boy fall? I don't know.
Autumn.
Small dick fall. So I saw on Twitter.
Are we doing the bit? Should I introduce it? We have a name for it.
I could give you an introduction. Sure. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're not ready for this, you better put your panties back on. It's Conan, New Loomis, Neutron. He's ready. He's going to give us letterbox reviews, one-line reviews that are going to really show you the entire franchise of Halloween.
That's right, folks. Every week or several times a week, no matter how often the show goes, I collect reviews from Letterboxd, the social media site for film, a place for film, with the best, most hilarious, most insightful, or just downright funny reviews. One-liner or slightly more.
Classic Conan bit. Someone's got to take the mantle, and I feel like it's you. You ready?
Everybody's talking about it. I mean, he put Friends in his podcast name, which pissed me off because Friends is my band name. But anyway, as we pointed out,
he has no friend. He needs a friend. Exactly. You've got several. You just don't address them.
They're just secret. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the point of the fact with this is that we collect the reviews of these are not famous reviewers. These are regular average human beings, just like you and I, giving their thoughts.
So they're good reviews, is essentially what you're saying.
Are they good reviews? I mean, good, bad.
I'm just
good,
saying,
bad.
like,
I'm the guy with the gun.
I feel like a lot of times professional reviewers suck. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So these are from the proletariat. The movie night extravaganza is for the people. So this is the reviews from the proletariat.
Okay, you ready?
Yes, I am. You
Mr.
tell me,
Ebert,
man.
tear down that wall.
You're running the bit. All right, from Aaron. If Michael Myers can wear a mask, then so can you.
It's a pandemic out there, folks.
And it's a pandemic, people. Maybe you noticed or not. So that's both the like somewhat clever, insightful, and also 100% true. Wear a mask, people. Come on.
You ready for the David Letterman?
Number 4. Mel. I wish Michael could be more confident and show us his cute, fabulous face and actually talk, because I'm sure he has a lot to say, especially about climate change and the important topics in today's society.
It's a run-on sentence.
It is, but
I don't like that on my podcast. No.
I like reviewers who properly punctuate.
I like reviewers to keep it under 5 words. Whereas I talk for 2 hours and 33 minutes. All right.
Number 4, Bell. Thank you, Bell. Thank you. Number 3, Jack. Why do these dumbasses scream, "Who's there?" Like Michael's just casually going to yell back, "Hey, man, just me."
Yeah, that was my favorite one of the ones that you sent me.
I like that one.
That's Jack.
No, this one's pretty great. All right.
All right, number 2. RJ. I'm the neighbor who closes their blinds and turns off their lights when Laurie cries for help. There you go.
Close second.
Now we
I'll
know.
give that a
Now
close
we
second.
know. No one's half the battle.
Which, by the way, is everybody in a suburban neighborhood, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean that's the real point of the movie. Arden J. I could fix him. I laughed for a solid minute when I saw that one, by the way.
And number 6.
There's so many Michael Myers thirst reviews on Letterboxd specifically. Like it's like I don't know if that's a thing, if it's fun to do, or if it says something about the modern
I don't know. I think
generation.
it's the site, because I was surprised by how many Toshiro Mifune thirst reviews there were.
That's not that surprising.
No, I mean
surprised
Toshiro
by that?
Mifune is a good-looking guy. I just was just surprised because that's not what I was expecting.
It's a thirsty
his
site.
movies don't get thirst reviewers.
Well, that's one of the great things about Letterboxd. You get all the reviews, thirsty and otherwise. And this is the top 5 Letterboxd one-liners, movie night extravaganza for Halloween.
Yeah, you're way better at that than I am, but there'll come a time.
Wait until I write an intro and outro. It'll be even better.
You ready?
It's like a little music introduction too.
Half in the bag. Yeah, exactly.
I feel pathetic for mentioning that I didn't write my intro on This is Revolution. Gene was like, "Oh, you suck at this. Let me write you an intro." I edited it. I added a lot of words. I changed some words. But graphic 6. Gonna move right past that.
All right. The bonus. Listen, the jack-o'-lantern stays lit during sex.
Indeed.
Jesse, 1978.
I mean,
small moment in the movie, but this is a favorite of mine.
In October for sure.
Yeah, look.
If it's not in October, it's a little weird, but
everything
really is
else
easy to wear the mask.
We can talk about what is on or off the table, but the jack-o'-lantern stays on.
I'm gonna clip our segment we just did there. Probably cut a couple lines out of it, but clip it. And then I'm serious. I'm gonna have that up as a clip because it's been a while since I posted any clip. And I'm literally a video editor, so it's kind of weird that I don't clip my podcast. But I also just
you're really advertising for yourself that way. Yeah, exactly. No, I never clip my own show. By the way, hire me.
I don't even own nail clippers. I do.
Hey,
No!
Oh, Clippers!
So the Socialist Sopranos memes guy agreed to come on to talk about Many Saints of Newark. That's
so
gotta
great.
happen. That's gotta happen soon.
I can't wait to see that.
So when are you going to get the guy on from the Institute for Gremlins 2 studies? That's the real question.
That would be pretty great.
Fuck that. Just get Joe Dante.
JG Michael offered Joe Dante, and I wanted to watch Piranha, and I wanted to have. That would be an amazing episode.
Right.
Where it would be amazing to have him, and if I could ever get Jeremy Wade from River Monsters, would be hilarious.
Wow.
It's never gonna happen, but I watch River Monsters like every day. It's like my favorite reality show. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we could get Gianni to pressure him. Gianni works for. I mean, it's History Channel, but it's still kind of in the same.
It's historical, kind of.
Well, all
It'll
right.
be history if you get eaten by one. Oh, hey!
Piranhas, small fish. I like fish who aren't small. Okay. All right, so I'm going to pass it first to the new Loomis for some final thoughts. I don't think anyone listened to 2 hours and 37 minutes of this that isn't listening to it right now, but we've hit it. We've hit the mark. It's been a good
that my friend Schaefer the Dark Lord calls that the coconut, which is the point of like when you're practicing, where you're just playing for so long that you start goofing around and it needs to stop immediately, and usually has to do with the bell of the ride. Ding, 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 ding. All right, we're done. We're done here. So final thought. Ding, 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 ding. Oh, bell of the ride only version of the Halloween theme song. Whoa, yeah, that's internet gold right there. That's good.
By the way, if you want to hear this but with zombies, Friday, we're going to have an amazing Dawn of the Dead episode, which is a movie that I've watched like at least a dozen times and love. So,
with the fabulous Renee Ruin.
Yeah. And the fabulous J. Andrew World.
Yes. That's how you should have your display name be.
The fabulous.
Fabulous.
Everyone's talking about it. My final thoughts on this movie. So iconic. I mean, I believe I might have closed with Psycho in the same way, but I stand by it. This movie created the tropes.
This is an iconic season. What can we really say?
Exactly. A really iconic season of Movie Night Extravaganza. It created things that we think of when we think of not just this
sex didn't exist before this movie.
Yes, it created sex. That actually that would be a good Letterboxd one-liner review. I remember when this movie created sex, and then was killed.
Sunglasses.
Yeah. The tropes that we think of when we think of these kinds of movies were created with this movie. It both created a form of film and also exemplifies it. So it exemplifies and is not necessarily of it. It's a great film, and one of the reasons why it touched so many people in so many ways is because it's scary, and that's a nice thing for a movie like this to be, rather than like, oh, it's cool how many people got killed. No, like Halloween, the original Halloween is genuinely scary, even after all this time, even after coming out of being very cynical, knowing all of the beats, the movements. It's also shocking how bloodless it is, considering like modern horror is so just, it's all about the gore and all about like the visual effects, not even practical effects, but visual effects.
Which kind of sets any franchise, I mean, I think even at this point, like kind of sets any franchise up for failure, which is kind of funny. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
it's going to look kind of like, look, have y'all seen The Lawnmower Man lately? That's all I got to say about it.
So the guy next door that keeps cutting off limbs in the lawnmower. No, I'm just kidding.
It's a love affair with a man as lawnmower. Exactly.
No, I agree with you, but I think that I had a point. I don't know. Just go on. I had a great point that I was gonna make, and then I don't know.
We start talking about The Lawnmower Man. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry / not sorry. No, I think this is when we talk about Murder Night Extravaganza, which we are, this has a completely justified place in history as one of the greats. And I like some of the sequels. I despise some of them. I like this 2018 one. I thought that was good. I look forward to seeing the new one, and I'm glad that this show is in the zeitgeist finally. About time.
Finally, we're not talking about a movie from like 1950 that
right, exactly.
and then finding a clip of Ronald Reagan that matches a movie that nobody's talking about.
Hey, and I love it. We love it, folks. We love it. But yeah,
Michael the Gipper Myers. That's my connection.
I think there's no way I could say it's underrated. I think it's almost impossible to rate, but there's no possible way that Halloween, the original, is overrated. It's fantastic.
How do you rate the 2018 one? Because I think that the 2018 one is very much, I mean, obviously in conversation with
I'll tell you exactly how I rated it. I rated it the other day. I think I did 4 out of 5. I thought it was good.
And what you said
maybe
was,
I did 3.5.
And what you said was, no, wait, not that one. I'm the neighbor who closes their blinds and turns off the light.
That's so good. I wish I would have written that. That's astounding. That's like, because that's one of the like, what the fuck moments.
I wish I waited for mine until I did a little bit of the research, because mine was like a solid, like, everybody's fucking pun.
Everybody's fucking. We ain't fucking over here.
Well,
yeah, I did 3.5, which for me is pretty good. Like, I mean, I'm pretty stingy. I'm really stingy with my 5s and pretty stingy with my 4s out of 5. But I liked it. I'm not sure if I would have watched it if not for this show, because I'm like a jilted lover. I've been burned so badly with so many of the sequels. Like H2O still pisses me off.
Amen.
As it should.
Sucks.
Dawson's Creek Halloween. That's what it is.
Exactly. Yeah, that was great. I love that. Yeah.
Jamie Lee Curtis had Janet Leigh like come into, I think it was Halloween H2O, right? That she kind of gave her advice or whatever. Like, or was that Resurrection?
Why don't you come to the worst film I've ever done and give me advice? Great.
Mom, I need you. This movie's gonna bomb. I need someone to talk about it.
I'm excited to see the new one though. Like I'm legitimately excited about it, because it's not that I ever forgot, but sometimes you just don't. Halloween's one of those movies like not everyone's gonna think about all the time, but it's always there, just like Michael Myers.
Yep, lurking, or just like Laurie in the more recent one, who's kind of.
I like that turnaround. That was clever.
Yeah.
What I was gonna say real quick, before I give a final sort of thought is it's funny because Blumhouse
trying to steal a thought.
But Blumhouse is saying they want to do more Halloweens after Halloween ends. Like what? How? What are you going to do after ending the trilogy?
Didn't you already do that? And wasn't it fucking terrible? Yeah, stop.
It's going to be his son, Nate Myers, and
who's an incel.
My review was aggressively
Steven Crowder.
My review was aggressively horny teens have overrun a small suburban town. Only Michael Myers can stop them.
That's good. I would have included that in our list if you weren't the host of the show. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, listen. Both of my parents famous review. I just didn't want to use their help.
I'm actually. I was going to say too. I'm seeing Halloween Kills when it premieres on Friday, and I'm looking forward to it after seeing Halloween 2018. Although I think what makes the original Halloween so special is that it's almost like it almost plays out like the story you would tell at a campfire, right? And that ending where you just hear him breathing at the end and he's gone, like a ghost in the night. I almost feel like as a self-contained story, it's something special.
We didn't even have campfires until the original Halloween. That's the thing.
Right, exactly. Just like we didn't have sex. It's a great film.
I mean, once everyone else gives their final thoughts, to play out the Halloween Kills version of it. I mean, I'm kind of disappointed that they start with the fire getting put out. Like, it just feels like, because if you didn't watch,
I'll just tell you how we're gonna do this. Okay, fire got put out. All right.
Oh man, Dave Chappelle walks out of the fire too. He's not burned at all. Jesus.
I think if I may, my letterbox review of Halloween, the 1978 one, I found this quote especially poignant upon my recent rewatch, which is, I watched him in a room for 15 years, staring at a wall, not seeing the wall, looking past the wall, looking at this night, inhumanly patient. Death has come to your little town, Sheriff.
Well, I'm sorry that Loomis wrote your review.
No, I think that's I didn't notice that shit when I saw it when I was 15. It was like, it's great.
Yeah.
You got to do it in the Sam Loomis voice though, like in the second one.
I'm the new Loomis. It says so on my title. All right.
Oh, okay.
My job title.
They're remaking everything now. Janda World got Conan Neutron got. I mean, he's shining.
For what it's worth, I think you were better than the Malcolm McDowell Loomis.
Low barrier to cross.
I'm sorry, Malcolm McDowell. Please forgive me.
Yeah. All of the Malcolm McDowell, please come on the show. But no,
honestly, though,
I really loved just the players, Malcolm McDowell, where he's just threatening Tim Robbins. I was into that.
Absolutely, where he's just and he's like, yeah, you fucking dick, like that kind of thing. Also, I love when he introduced Captain Beefheart on Saturday Night Live, which is part of the Saturday Night Live intro only Twitter account. So anyway, but
I've shared on this podcast when I was in Texas and some guy was telling me about Bohemian Grove, and I was talking about Eyes Wide Shut, and he's like, oh, I fucking hate Eyes Wide Shut, and I was like, because I was watching it when I was in San Antonio, and then like Maria, my ex-girlfriend, like we met some guy she knew that she met up with in San Antonio that was like this old guy, and I guess his cousin was like a famous jazz singer or something that had passed away. And the guy was like, oh, well, my cousin took me to Bohemian Grove, and Malcolm McDowell was sitting there. And I had like a conversation with Malcolm McDowell, and he was like, I really hate Eyes Wide Shut because like it doesn't tell stories about that kind of place at all or something. And I was like, this sounds like the beginning of the plot of Eyes, like it sounds like Eyes Wide Shut could have taken off from here. Like, oh, it's like a.
Did he go
Malcolm McDowell is a member of Bohemian Grove? Is that what we're saying?
Apparently.
Apparently, they pee on a lot of trees too, is what I understand.
I mentioned it on Eyes Wide Shut, and my ex-girlfriend got very upset that I mentioned that I had met someone that had known Malcolm McDowell and was in Bohemian Grove, and she's like, he might die now, and I was like, I didn't,
That could be like a sequel to A Clockwork Orange. The Droogies go to Bohemian Grove.
Well, no, the thing is that he's been paid off by the government at the end of Clockwork Orange, so he could work his way up the bureaucracy.
He's like working for the reactionary conservative government. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what he's doing at the end, right? They kind of bribe him, and you don't know whether he takes the bribe or not. And
well, in the book you do, but that's a different story.
Yeah, the book goes on about a chapter too long.
All right, old Loomis.
Who's next? JG Michael, is that you?
All right.
Wherever he wants to go. I don't know.
I don't know. I think I said what I wanted.
I'm conflict adverse, so
I haven't said anything yet about it. So I think.
All right, old Loomis, hit it.
No, I absolutely, part of the reason why when I suggested doing doing like a genre thing and suggested slashers, like, first one Psycho, second one was Halloween.
I paid you $50 not to tell anybody that was your idea, so I could see it.
You rat bastard.
Yeah, but there is an absolute reason why, like, Psycho and Halloween are both, so because they're genre breakers, this where Psycho came out of noir and suspense and created, the proto slasher. This came out of exploitation films of the 70s and created the slasher film.
And they both kind of, in some ways, come out of, the people creating them wanting to try something different that is going to attract attention to it. Which kind of is an amazing formula that gets just beat to death with not so good versions of that. But like,
Yeah.
I think that everything really, specifically Alfred Hitchcock did, kind of got beat to death. I mean, John Carpenter has had a very diverse career, and I respect the fuck out of him for that. But like, at least Alfred Hitchcock's like suspense thing, like, because he gives like, you can find so many lectures where he's just explaining how suspense works. And any movie that like copies an Alfred Hitchcock movie, you just assume they haven't watched any of the videos where Alfred Hitchcock explains how suspense works. So I don't know.
But no, I mean it is an absolute like classic because of that. And just I'll read what I said off of Letterboxd for Halloween 2018. I liked it better when it was called Terminator 2 Judgment Day. I thought it was I liked, don't get me wrong, I liked the 2018 version. I think there was a lot of things that they could
Allison, more like Sarah Connor's.
I think they should be a buddy movie where Jamie Lee Curtis and Sarah Connor teams up and they have to fight the Shape, which is actually a time traveling android played by Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Simon Pegg
and the little black kid from the movie. And
so, Jamie Lee Curtis, Simon Pegg, Nick Frost, Sarah Connor, and Gary Coleman.
Yeah, exactly. You got a movie right there.
The fact that Gary Coleman died, that's a perfect casting. Yeah,
he's been reborn. No, but like that kid was very adult about his dialogue. That's
it was very much like Gary Coleman on Different Strokes. It was just very much, just a one what you talking about Will short of being a full Gary Coleman.
He said, "What you talking about, Vicky?"
Look, you never go full Gary Coleman.
No.
Oh God. If I drink the way that I did on this podcast, I'm gonna get canceled on the Tropic Thunder one. But anyway,
you're gonna be in the Doug Lynn category.
But
Dave Chappelle did nothing wrong.
And I don't want to say that I didn't enjoy the Halloween 2018 movie. I just felt like it was very obvious what they were trying to do, and they didn't quite do anything new with it, which is kind of a shame.
Yeah,
it was
I don't
it
know.
was nostalgia.
It felt like a Halloween movie to me, which it hasn't for a while.
I'll give you that. No, it was nostalgia. It hit in all the right ways. It was, and even
it wasn't just nostalgia though. I mean, I think that,
come on, don't take money. Don't take, what was it? They like making reference.
There is a lot of callbacks in that movie.
No, I didn't say that there's no nostalgia. There's a lot of nostalgia. I just don't think it's just nostalgia. I think that the fact that
I think there was a lot of nostalgia that drove the movie forward, and I don't think there was. There were some new things in there, like the music absolutely, was phenomenal. How they kind of like updated that and really brought that forward. But it kind of missed the subtle critique of suburban living that the original one had, and it was missing a lot of the stuff that made this one, the first one, great.
They're focusing on the trauma, right? The trauma was the thing.
Yeah,
that's like
and the first one doesn't really like touch like. I mean, besides the scream, the famous scream that Jamie Lee Curtis gives, like, doesn't really touch the trauma of it. And I think that this movie was kind of driven, like the 2018 version was kind of driven by Jamie Lee Curtis. Like, she, like, if you watch interviews with her, which I've had to do quite a few of, and she keeps trying to sell me yogurt. Anyway, no, but like if you go through a lot of that, like I think a lot of it comes from her. She has some very deep thoughts about where Laurie's been in that amount of time, and I did like the fact that something that I really liked about the 2018 one is that it wasn't just like, oh well, her daughter is also traumatized by this in the same way. Is that her daughter is traumatized by her trauma, and the trauma travels generationally, but like not in the way that like liberals are like, oh, generational trauma, blah blah blah. Like no, like conceivably speaking, like you know what I mean? Like Child Protective Services took her away. That is a fucking traumatizing thing to happen to any kid. You know what I mean? Like the idea that like she's an alcoholic and she's drinking in front of them. The idea that that her daughter even has trauma from watching, like both wanting to know her grandma better, and the fact that like her mother is just completely traumatized by her mother, and it's just like I want to just have my like have my normal job and my normal like really boring husband. Like I don't want to. Which they didn't really react to the fact that the husband died, which is a little bit weird. But
yeah, it's kind of a
but, like,
non-starter, right?
Well, the peanut butter was just such a turn off to everybody that you know, it's like when he gets killed.
Well, I'm
it's
glad
like,
he can't rape our
well,
dog.
whatever. No more peanut butter on his penis.
I'm glad our dog isn't licking my husband's penis anymore. Let's move on. He has closet space.
So I want to ask you guys all one question that just popped in my head, and then that'll be the last thing. But I was just curious. I mean, Forrest, I should ask: am I allowed to do this? It's your show.
Yeah, I you know, I've lost control.
Okay, well, I wanted to ask. So when I was growing up, you know, every Halloween, October-ish, AMC would be showing all the Halloween movies. And the ones they showed the most were the fourth and the fifth one with Danielle Harris as Jamie Lloyd, the little girl. And maybe it's just nostalgia because I grew up on those movies in particular, but I've always had a soft spot for the Danielle Harris Halloween movies. Now, I was wondering what people think of those.
I haven't seen them.
They're
okay. I guess I'm the only one that likes them.
I'm not saying that they're bad. They had some interesting ideas, but the whole psychic connection thing was just weird.
The fifth one is not that good. I thought the fourth one was pretty decent.
Yeah, it was like they had some good ideas, but trying to like draw it forward. But then the whole like connection to you know, the very ending of the fourth one where she kills the her new her foster mom and
spoilers
and the clown costume. The same clown costume that Michael Myers wore was just like interesting and kind of interesting, and then they didn't do anything with it and except
they just retcon it almost.
It just I don't know, it was like some interesting ideas that never really went anywhere, and then because the fifth one set up the whole
ideas,
druids thing for the sixth one too,
right? And Dr. Loomis is like an abuser of children in that movie.
Yeah, it's they're so weird.
Yeah, rest for that plot twist.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. I could have called it coming.
Well, I like Halloween 4, but that's my final thought.
All right. Well, thank you for discussing so much here.
Thanks for listening to all 17 hours of this show.
Sorry if I talked over one and kept this one going long.
As we break down every single Halloween, anything that's ever come out. Next week, we'll be talking about every toy that's ever come out. We'll be rating them for an hour apiece. Right now, though, I'm just going to say my keyboard's not working again.
That's your new catchphrase.
It is, because my keyboard does not work. All right, I'm just going to say left is bad.